Hello everyone, Omni-sensei here with What If I Was Reborn in the Justice League universe as the Shadow Monarch, Part 4. If you enjoy this content, please smash the like button. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to check out the original story linked in the description. I hope you enjoy listening to it.
At the very top floor of LexCorp Tower, Lex Luthor stood amidst a cathedral of steel and circuitry. Lights shimmered off the unfinished frame of a towering android. Sleek, seamless alloy limbs. Eyes that hadn't yet flared to life. Luthor had been working tirelessly, night after night, on this new creation. The design wasn't his alone, far from it. The schematics came from the Justice League themselves. In their infinite wisdom, they had handed him the blueprints to Amazo, the godlike android that once nearly obliterated them under the naive pretense of collaboration. Fools. The only reason he hadn't been atomized when Amazo returned was because of Ashbourne. That mysterious, calculating and unreadable, had somehow crossed paths with the android and convinced it not only to spare Luthor, but to become his adopted son. As if that wasn't absurd enough, Amazo was going to school. This was something Luthor to this moment couldn't understand. The sheer insanity of it all kept playing in his head over and over again. A godlike machine capable of rewriting physics, now learning about algebra and cafeteria etiquette. And yet, it worked. Ashbourne had done it again somehow. He had defused a weapon not by destroying it, but by humanizing it. That alone was proof enough. Proof that Ashbourne wasn't just clever. He was dangerously insightful. He read people like open books. He anticipated them. Luthor had reviewed reports, the villains changing their ways, Ace following him on their first or second meeting, the shame Batman endured after their encounters. All calculated moves, orchestrated carefully. When Luthor thought of that, he gritted his teeth and let out a slow breath, admitting a truth he'd never speak aloud. He had a begrudging respect for Ashbourne. And beneath that, a flicker of fear. If Ashbourne ever turned his full attention to power or domination, Luthor wasn't confident he could rival him. The man didn't need brute strength. He moved people like chess pieces. He understood them. He owned them. Still, as he turned back to the android, a smile curled at his lips. Let Ashbourne play his games. Because he, Lex Luthor, had something far greater. A vessel. A body. One that would never wither, never break. With the League and Cadmus busy tearing each other apart, he would rise above the chaos. I will have a perfect immortal body, he spoke to himself, running a hand down the android's plated chest, for my mind to live in eternally, all while those fools destroy each other. Soon, I will become the god of this world. The hundreds of millions funneled into Cadmus research and development with no results. And the true breakthrough? It came from a lonely employee at LexCorp, Dr. Evo. It was he who we have to thank for my impending godhood. A cold voice drifted from behind him. That's the last piece I needed to hear. Luthor turned, and of course, there he was, Batman, looming in the shadows of the lab, his presence as unwelcome as it was inevitable. When you and the Atom worked together to stop Amazo, Batman continued, stepping forward slowly, you saw the blueprints. I suspected you had a photographic memory. Luthor gave a slow clap. You figured it out. Yes. I'm far too modest to boast. Batman didn't laugh. You fired the Watchtower's cannon. You used Cadmus as a smokescreen. The whole operation was just a stepping stone. The real goal was to give yourself superpowers. Luthor's grin widened. And to ruin Superman's reputation, of course. Imagine it, I ascend to godhood, and then I save the world. I destroy the menace that is the Justice League. I kill Superman, and they build statues in my honor. His voice dripped with ambition, with madness barely kept in check. In a blink, Batman's hand snapped forward, a batarang slicing through the air toward the android. Luthor's hand shot out, lightning fast. He caught it mid-flight, his fingers crushing the device as it sparked violently, a small explosion crackling in his palm. Smoke hissed from his hand as he stared coldly at Batman. That, Luthor said, voice tinged with annoyance, was uncalled for. Then, with a sudden roar of fury and strength, Lex Luthor lunged forward charging at Batman, fists clenched. Batman rolled beneath Lex's first swing, then twisted around and delivered two punches, swift and brutal, into Lex's chest and side. But Lex didn't move. Not even a grunt. What? Batman, that half-second of surprise was all Luthor needed. His hand clamped down onto Batman's shoulder like a vice. You shouldn't have come here, alone, he sneered. With a roar, Luthor hurled Batman like a ragdoll across the lab, sending him crashing through the reinforced glass window with a shattering noise. The Dark Knight disappeared into the night, cape fluttering as he vanished from view. Lex turned back toward the centerpiece of his new body, his future. Lex's lips curled into a smug smile. He strolled across the lab floor and lowered himself into the neural sync chair beside the android. Excitement crackled inside him like electricity, anticipation rushing through his veins. It was time to become a god. Hey, Lex, a calm voice called out, that android is Cadmus property. You'll have to find somewhere else to keep your brain. Lex's eyes snapped to the source. Amanda Waller stood at the door with a weapon aimed straight at the android. Without hesitation, she fired. A beam of gold-white light struck the androids, and in seconds, the body began to unravel at a molecular level. Lex screamed. You arrogant cow. That was weeks of work. Nano de-assembler beam, she said coolly. Your design, I believe. Lex's eyes burned with rage. You'll pay for that. Waller smiled. No, Lex. You are going to pay. Firing the Watchtower's cannon? Destroying Cadmus? You're going down, Baldy. Lex charged forward and slammed the back of his hand across her face with crushing force. Amanda flew backward, crashing into the steel wall with a sickening thud. Did you think you can take me down alone? Lex asked in a sneering tone. She forced herself upright despite the pain. Actually, yeah. But just in case I don't, she smiled and looked past Lex. Lex turned, and there they stood. 6 figures. Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern, Martian Manhunter, Batman, and at the forefront Superman. It is over, Luthor, Superman said, his voice full of finality. Lex gritted his teeth and said, Don't think you've W. Then without warning. Boom. The roof above them exploded in a shockwave of light and force, glass and steel raining down. The entire building trembled as the night sky opened up. Everyone looked up and froze. Descending slowly, ominously, was a creature like nothing the League had ever seen. A figure wreathed in crackling blue energy, its obsidian exoskeleton drinking in the light until only a void remained. The air itself warped around it, reality recoiling as blue veins of power pulsed through its limbs like frozen lightning. Its wings, jagged, carapace-like, curved behind it, each serrated edge humming with restrained violence. Twin blue eyes burned from the abyss of its horned helm, glowing with an intelligence far beyond the mindless fury of a beast. Mandibles clicked faintly near its jaw, a sound like grinding bones. Its claws flexed, elongated and lethal, yet its posture was regal. A predator who no longer needed to roar to instill terror. Lex's mouth hung open, his usual arrogance drowned in primal dread. Amanda Waller stood frozen. Even Superman stiffened, his fists tightening at his sides. The other heroes were at full alert. Flash swallowed hard. What is that? A voice, deep, resonant, vibrating with power, came from the creature. Lex Luthor, my king, commands your presence. Lex stepped back, horror etched across every inch of his face. His breath came shallow, his usual arrogance replaced with a primal fear he couldn't mask. The others weren't faring better. The heroes, battle-hardened and seasoned, felt the cold coil of dread wrap around their spines. They knew. They all knew who was meant by my king. If Igris, the armored knight from before, had embodied grace and skill, this was the embodiment of brutality and fear. A walking nightmare. Superman stepped forward, his jaw tense, voice even. Lex has crimes to answer to, he said firmly. The shadow did not acknowledge him. It descended slowly, landing in the center of the shattered laboratory, surrounded by ruined tech and twisted steel. Its obsidian claws clicked softly against the floor as it took a step toward Lex. Lex recoiled. Just one step. The creature took another. Superman gritted his teeth and moved quickly, placing himself between the monster and its target. His cape flowed behind him, shoulders squared. I said, Lex is coming with us, he growled. Your king will have to. SCHLKK. Superman's words stopped, his eyes widened in shock. Sharp, searing pain burst through his body. He looked down. The creature's hand had impaled his shoulder, its claws puncturing skin that no weapon ever could. A spurt of blood splashed against the white of Lex's sweet and face. Then, whoosh. With a violent, dismissive motion, the creature flung him aside like a rag doll. Superman crashed into a wall, bouncing off with a sickening crunch, blood smearing across the rubble. He hit the floor and didn't get up. Lex froze, too stunned to scream, too frightened to breathe. The Justice League, Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern, Martian Manhunter, they all stood paralyzed. Even Amanda Waller's mouth hung open, unable to speak. All of them staring at the blood pool under Superman. And only the sound of blood dripping to the floor filled the air. They were stunned for 2 seconds. But it was already too late to react now. The creature moved. It was on Lex in a flash, snatching him up by the throat like a child picking up a toy. Lex struggled, kicking, clawing at the iron grip. No, wait. The two sank into the shadows. Lex's scream faded. Gone. Batman was the first to move. He sprinted to Superman, dropping to his knees. His gloved hands hovered over the torn flesh, the gaping wound that cut through muscle and bone. His face twisted in a rare expression of shock. His torso's been pierced all the way through. Batman yelled, fury laced with desperation. He needs immediate medical attention. In a blur of motion, Flash scooped Superman into his arms and vanished in a streak of blur and lightning. The rest of the League followed, the grimness of their expressions mirroring the urgency in their movements. Amanda remained where she stood. Alone. Her hands trembled as she stared at the spot where the shadow vanished. Her mind raced, trying to process what she just witnessed. Superman, the Man of Steel, was invulnerable. A being almost impossible to beat without kryptonite. And yet, that thing had pierced him like his body was paper. Her heart sank. She had always feared the Justice League would become the world's greatest threat. But now she knows. It wasn't the League they had to fear. It was them. The shadows. Lex Luthor stopped struggling. The moment they passed through the dark veil of space, arriving in the shadow domain, his body seized. His limbs locked up, not by force but by fear. Darkness stretched endlessly in every direction, a suffocating abyss without light or warmth. And in that darkness, they stared. Countless eyes. Glowing, ominous, unblinking. Purple orbs of all sizes blinked at him from every corner of the void, some no larger than a coin, others the size of boulders. Some hovered close, others floated in the distant black. His blood ran cold. How many of them are there? He thought, his brilliant mind unable to comprehend the vastness of what he had entered. The shadow still holding him by the throat rose higher, wings fanning out, and without a word, it flew, carrying him across the void. In the distance, something began to rise from the dark. A palace. A massive, radiant white palace. It was a stark contrast to everything around it, standing tall and majestic in this oppressive world of shadows and eyes. It glowed faintly, almost ethereal, as though it had no place in the nightmare realm that surrounded it. They entered. The creature dragged Luthor through long halls, the soles of Lex's shoes scraping loudly against polished white stone. He felt like a sack of potatoes being pulled behind a cart, and he didn't dare protest. Not here. Not in this place where he had no authority, no allies, no hope. He simply watched. The creature carrying him had changed. The once blue energy that crackled around it now glowed purple, its body darker, matching the hue of the many eyes that watched them from beyond the palace walls. The palace was pure white. Everything, the floors, the high vaulted ceilings, the silent, seamless walls, was carved from a stone that shimmered like polished pearl. Eventually, they entered a vast hall. Lex took it all in quickly. Dozens of creatures lined both sides of the hall, all of them monstrous, unique, and powerful. Each stood like a silent sentinel, unmoving, their glowing eyes tracking his every movement. Not one was identical to another, yet they all shared that same, unsettling presence, beings of impossible power and devotion. At the far end of the hall sat a white throne. Empty. Lex's heart pounded. This was a throne room. He was in the court of the king. The creature dragged him to the center of the hall and, with unnatural strength, forced Lex to his knees. Lex didn't resist. He didn't dare. Then the shadow grabbed his head and pushed it into the cold, smooth floor. Lex grimaced, unable to move as the creature knelt beside him. And around him, all the others did the same. A wave of synchronized motion, the entire host of monsters lowered themselves in a bow. The silence was absolute. Then soft steps. Lex's ears picked them up before his eyes could see. Measured, confident steps echoed through the throne room. The steps stopped. Then came a voice, smooth, calm, and unbearably familiar. "Rise." The pressure on Lex's head vanished. He looked up slowly and froze. There, sitting on the throne, was Ashbourne. A smile played on his face. Amused. Knowing. "You have done well, Baru," Ashbourne said without looking at Lex. Lex followed his gaze and saw the creature that had brought him bowing even lower now, the air around it humming with pride and devotion. It knelt in complete reverence, shuddering slightly in what Lex could only describe as joy. Lex couldn't believe it. This thing, this monster that tore through Superman like he was paper, was practically giddy from receiving Ashbourne's praise. Ashbourne turned his gaze to Lex, smile gone, voice colder now. "Now, Lex," he said softly, "I have explained it to you. Warned you. I even tried to show you another way to play your game." His tone dropped, filled with disappointment. But all of it was in vain. You remained the same to the very end. He tilted his head, his eyes narrowing. "You are a disappointment among humans." Lex twitched. His body tensed as fury surged through his veins. His pride, his ego, his entire being rejected those words. "Disappointment," he hissed, lifting his head defiantly. "I am a human. And yet, I stood toe-to-toe with gods. I could threaten even Superman. If I had completed my perfect body, I would have become a god. You wouldn't dare speak to me like this if I had." His voice echoed off the walls of the throne room. But none of the shadows moved. "No," Ashbourne replied calmly, "nothing would have changed. Even if you had completed the body and became a god, as you so proudly put it, that is all you would have been. Just another puny god." Lex clenched his fists, his teeth grinding together in frustration. "Then why?" he spat. "Why did you bring me here? To insult me before killing me?" Ashbourne chuckled, a quiet, humorless sound. "As amusing as it is to see you like this, no." His eyes narrow. "The outcome didn't change, and your choices remain the same. Not even with my interference. Which leads me to believe that Darkseid's revival because of you is inevitable at this rate. If I had left you to the League, they would have failed to stop it from happening." He took a slow step forward, his tone colder now. "I simply think it's fair to let you hear the cause of your end." Lex's face paled, the arrogant veneer faltering. "What are you talking about?" he demanded. "What does any of that have to do with me?" Ashbourne's smile returned, but it was not kind. "You have Brainiac inside you," he said. "And eventually, you two merge. Once you separate again, one thing leads to another. You try to revive your partner, and in doing so, you set off a chain of events that ends with Darkseid invading Earth." Ashbourne's eyes gleamed. "I'm simply removing a troublesome future. One you were going to die in anyway." Lex opened his mouth to protest, but pain racked his body before a word could escape. He fell to the floor, clutching his chest as it twisted, his muscles spasming unnaturally. A scream ripped through him as his stomach bulged outward, forming a face. Not just any face. Brainiac. Lex's voice trembled. "What is this?" But Brainiac ignored him, turning its forming eyes toward Ashbourne. "I had planned to stay hidden until a more suitable body was ready," it said in its cold, metallic voice. "How did you know I was there?" Ashbourne's tone didn't change. "I already explained, I know how this ends," he said. "Your program never completes. You are destroyed, regardless of what I do today. I'm just cutting losses here." He gestured slightly. "Nothing personal." Brainiac didn't reply immediately, but a new glow sparked in its eyes. "You are powerful," Ashborn Black, it said. You crave knowledge, yes? I can give you that. Every star I've consumed, every race I've catalogued, all of it, can be yours. If we join forces. At the same moment, Lex cried out again, desperation filling his voice. Please, he begged, his eyes filled with terror, sweat running down his brow. Don't let it take me. Help me, please. You have the power. Ashborn's eyes focused on Lex alone, ignoring the AI's offer. What makes humans special in the DC universe and in any other, he said, voice low and steady, is not just their intelligence or creativity. It's their emotions. They have more than any other race and they can control and repress them. He took another step closer. They can act on their goodness and be holier than angels, or give in to their malevolence and become worse than demons. Ashborn's voice dropped, heavy with disappointment. Lex, you clung only to pride, power, obsession. You represent the worst humanity has to offer. Superman, the person you despise the most, and despite all his faults, naivety and alien origin, he is more human than you. Ashborn paused, letting every word sink before continuing. That's why you're a disappointment. Ashborn stood up. It is too pitiful. You had a path to greatness, he said quietly. Yet you abandoned it. Then, without another word, he vanished, leaving only silence behind. Lex was left kneeling, trembling. His mouth opened to scream, but no sound came. Then the shadows moved. All of them. The creatures that had stood silently like statues began to converge. Their eyes glowed brighter, hungering. Lex wanted to crawl back. No, wait. But Brainiac was controlling the body, its arms bulging and morphing into slick, writhing tentacles, striking out in one final, desperate struggle. The court of shadows fell upon them. And Lex's screams were drowned in the endless dark. After reaching the conclusion with Lex, Ashborn stepped through the veil of darkness and into the door front of his house. Ashborn opened the door and walked inside and headed directly to the living room. Its lights were dimmed, the TV screen casting a flickering glow over the space. Ace and Amazo sat on the couch, eyes glued to a dramatic Mexican soap opera featuring betrayal, slaps, and a lot of crying. Ashborn walked in without ceremony and said, "Hi," before dropping onto the couch beside Galatea, who was also there, seemingly out of place among the domestic calm. Galatea stared at him, unsure, nervous even. When it became clear he wasn't going to say anything more, her brow furrowed in annoyance. "Aren't you going to say anything to me?" she snapped. "No questions about why I'm here." Ashborn, without turning to her, kept his gaze on the screen. "It's clear you made up your mind and left. Now you have no place to go. What's there to ask?" Galatea blinked, stunned by the casual dismissal. She looked at the two abnormal adoptees and said, "I thought their strange behavior and lack of concern when they saw me was just them. You know, because of their nature. But I was wrong." Her voice hardened. "It's you. You're the reason. You shouldn't be allowed to raise children or anything for that matter." Ashborn shrugged. "That's harsh. I think I'm doing a rather good job here." Galatea let out a frustrated sigh. "Can we talk?" For the first time, Ashborn glanced her way, his eyes meeting hers. "Fine." The two stood and made their way to one of the guest rooms, leaving the TV drama and the boys behind. Ace watched them leave, then leaned toward Amazo. "Do you think we'll have a new sister?" "It is possible," Amazo replied matter-of-factly. Galatea's foot faltered mid-step as the words hit her ears, thanks to her super hearing. Her head turned slightly, wanting to yell that she wasn't some lost child in need of adoption, but then she remembered who she was dealing with. She swallowed her words and thought to herself, he wouldn't suggest it, would he? Inside the guest room, Ashborn closed the door and leaned against it, arms crossed. "So, T, what do you want to talk about?" Galatea hesitated, then spoke clearly. "I'm not with Cadmus anymore. I'm not with anyone. I have no place. I want to work like a normal person. I know you have given jobs to former villains before." Ashborn tilted his head, studying her. "What made you think I'd agree?" Galatea folded her arms tightly, showing a strong front. "I left because of your words. You have to take responsibility. Ashbourne chuckled, genuinely amused. That might be the worst reason I've ever heard. But, fine. What job are you looking for? Any specific skills? Galatia's shoulders sagged in relief but then froze. Her mind blanked. What was she good at? She laughed weakly. I can beat people up. That's kind of my thing. Ashbourne gave her a long look, clearly unimpressed. Do you know anything besides beating people up? She rubbed her neck, embarrassed. I can be a bodyguard. Ashbourne stroked his chin thoughtfully. That's not needed. And you would be too obvious. Amanda and the costumed crowd won't let a dangerous clone run around without raising red flags and rallying to hunt you. How about a chauffeur? Easy job, keeps you out of sight, and it pays well. Galatia's eye twitched. That's the best you could come up with? Ashbourne smirked. Don't look down on the job. Mercy Graves became CEO of LexCorp after being a chauffeur. It's the highest known jump in the corporate ladder. Galatia sighed and gave in. Fine. I'm living here. It makes the job easier, right? She stated as a matter of fact, then turned around not waiting for a response, clearly planning to go back to the living room. Ashbourne blinked at the suddenness, then let out a soft chuckle. You will fit right in. But how are you planning to avoid Supergirl's intrusive dreams? Galatia froze mid-step. The realization struck her like a slap. That damn connection to Supergirl through dreams. She could still see her. See her life. Her thoughts. She turned to look over her shoulder at Ashbourne, her lips slightly parted, unsure of what to say. Ashbourne tilted his head slightly, as if amused. You forgot that, didn't you? Galatia's expression shifted, first to embarrassment, then to one of fierce determination. Then I'll go get rid of her permanently. Ashbourne blinked. You are as violent and aggressive as an African buffalo. Galatia frowned. I'm not. I spared her earlier. But if it's the only way for me to live in peace, I don't mind finishing the job. Ashbourne shook his head and stepped closer to her, raising one hand. Gently, almost mockingly, he placed it atop her head. Galatia's scowl turned to confusion, and then to shock as Ashbourne's eyes began to glow a deep, unnatural purple. She couldn't look away. Then, just like that, his eyes dimmed, and he lowered his hand. I severed the connection between the two of you, he said plainly. No need for violence. Galatia took a step back, blinking rapidly. You can do that? Her voice was a mixture of awe and disbelief. Why didn't you do it earlier? Ashbourne gave a lazy shrug. You didn't ask. And I was amused by you. Galatia narrowed her eyes, suspicion flaring. You're a meta-human. You tricked everyone. Ashbourne chuckled softly. No, I'm not a meta-human. And I lied to no one. I simply never bothered showing the tricks I can do. People assumed I was a normal person. His smirk deepened. That's on them. Galatia's gaze sharpened. Then what are you? What can you really do? Ashbourne raised a single finger and without another word, a wave of invisible pressure hit Galatia. Her entire body locked in place. Her arms curled inward, hugging her tightly. Her feet lifted from the floor, her body floating as if pulled by unseen strings. What is this? She demanded, struggling with every ounce of her super strength. Nothing budged. She was utterly frozen, completely at his mercy. Ashbourne's smile widened. This is one of the things I can do. Pretty much. I can do anything to you. And you are helpless to resist. Galatia's eyes widened, and for the first time, a flicker of fear danced across them. Shouldn't you be worried? She said weakly. What if Ace and Amazo hear us? Ashbourne paused, then burst into laughter. I didn't mean anything, he said, waving her concern away as he released the invisible grip on her. Her feet touched the ground with a quiet thud. Then, with a crooked grin, he added, so you do have that kink inside of you. How surprising. He turned and walked toward the door. Galatea stood there, cheeks flushed a deep red, face a mixture of fury and shame. "I'm not into that kind of play," she shouted at his back. Ashbourne waved over his shoulder. "Whatever you say." "I really am not into it," she repeated, marching after him. "It's your fault for making it vague. Stop. Come back here." While Galatea had taken her first step into a new life, far from Cadmus and the weapon life she led, the atmosphere in the watchtower was heavy with silence and sorrow. The usual energy that coursed through the League's headquarters was gone, replaced by an eerie stillness. Superman's grave injury cast a long, terrifying shadow across every corner of the station. Even the most hardened members of the League, those who had stared death in the face more times than they could count, were left shaken. Their friend, their leader, their symbol of strength and hope now lay in the medbay, his body barely clinging to life. The sight of him with a gaping wound torn through his side was a brutal reminder that even the greatest among them could fall. But no one felt it more than Kara. Supergirl sat in a room near the medical bay, nursing her wounds. Her face was bruised, lips split, ribs cracked, remnants of her encounter with her. The clone. Galatea. She didn't understand what had happened exactly. One moment she was being utterly overwhelmed, knocked down again and again, a mirror image of herself delivering punishment with ease, and then she had been spared. Galatea stood over her, victorious, expression unreadable. And then, she walked away. Just like that. As if Kara didn't matter. That stung more than the injuries. The clone had looked her in the eyes and decided she was better. That Kara wasn't even worth the final blow. And then she'd left. Abandoned Cadmus. Abandoned the mission. Abandoned her. It left Kara hollow. Angry. Confused. The pride she carried as Superman's cousin, the hope she held for being a symbol just like him, it all felt thinner now. Fragile. The clone had surpassed her and pitted her. And now, here she was, still sore, still reeling, and her cousin was fighting for his life. The last of her family. The last link to Krypton. The only one left of her people. According to the rest of the heroes present, the creature that did this, it didn't use kryptonite. It didn't cast spells or channel mystical forces. It didn't even seem to try. It had ripped into Kal-El with such terrifying ease. Kara couldn't stop replaying the image, that wound. That hole. If the strike had been aimed slightly to the side, or lower, or to the heart, he would have been dead. Just like that. And the worst part? She was scared. Truly scared. She believed in the near invincibility of her lineage, that very few things could harm them. But now, everything was shaken. The truth was cruel. She and Kal-El were defeated on the same day by different opponents without using their weakness against them. They lost in their own domain. What if next time, there was no mercy? What if they faced one of these monsters again, and this time, it ended with a corpse? What could they do then? She didn't have an answer. And neither did the others. Throughout the watchtower, members of the League moved like ghosts. Quiet. Distracted. Haunted. They had always believed in Superman as the final line. The biggest weapon. The ace in the hole. But now the ace had fallen. And they didn't even understand what they were up against. A shadow army that came and went like mist. A monarch no one had seen. Abilities beyond their comprehension. Motivation unclear. Numbers unknown. The fear wasn't just for Superman. It was for all of them. Because something terrible was rising from the shadows. And they had no idea how to stop it. The morning sun brought warmth to the early hours of the day, and in the Black family villa, Ashbourne stood holding a bundle of black fabric under one arm and a pair of sunglasses and a flat black cap in his other hand. Galatea emerged from the hallway, brushing back her loose platinum hair with a yawn. Ashbourne tossed the bundle toward her. "This is your job outfit. It'll keep you out of the public eye." Galatea caught it and held the uniform up with one brow arched in skepticism. "A hat and sunglasses? Really?" Ashbourne smirked. "It's more than enough. You'd be surprised how often the simplest disguises work. Isn't that right?" Both Ace and Amazo, standing nearby with their backpacks ready for the day, nodded in unison. "Absolutely," Ace said. "It is statistically proven," Amazo added. Galatea let out a long sigh but took the uniform anyway. In a blur of motion, she vanished from sight and reappeared 2 seconds later in front of them, now fully dressed in a uniform. Black suit jacket, slacks, white shirt underneath, sunglasses perched neatly on her nose, and a cap tilted just enough to add flair. She struck a small pose, one hand on her hip. "What do you think?" Ashbourne nodded in approval. "Looks good." Ace gave a thumbs up. "Cool." Amazo tilted his head slightly, analyzing her. "By human standards, you should be considered stunning." Galatea grinned and pointed at him. "I like him already." Ashbourne gave her a dry look. "He's underage. Do anything out of line, and I'll be the one sending you to jail." Galatea rolled her eyes, hands in the air. "You're the one with the dirty mind." Neither Ashbourne nor the children responded, already turning to head out the door. Galatea, huffing in frustration at being ignored, trailed behind them. Outside, Ashbourne gave her a quick rundown. "I'm heading to Shadow Corporation. You'll be dropping off Ace and Amazo at school." Galatea paused, blinking. About that. I don't know how to drive." Ashbourne stopped mid-step and turned to stare at her. "You didn't think to mention that earlier?" Galatea gave a sheepish smile, scratching the back of her head. "I forgot." Ashbourne let out a long sigh. "Fine. I'll drive them for now. But you're going to learn." Galatea winced. "Don't I need an ID for that? I don't have one." Ashbourne waved a hand dismissively. "Not a problem. I'll make you a fake one. You'll be a foreign girl who just got U.S. citizenship." Galatea gave a slow, accepting nod. "Ha. That actually sounds kinda cool." "In the meantime," Ashbourne said, unlocking the car, "you're staying home." She groaned but didn't protest. She'd already learned it was easier to just follow along for now. And just like that, her first day as part of this strange new family had begun. The medbay in the watchtower was quiet, eerily so, until the sound of soft groaning broke through the silence. Superman stirred, his eyes fluttering open to the bright lights above. He blinked, confused at first, then memories of the battle crashed into him like a wave. The shadow creature. The pain. The darkness. A chorus of gasps filled the room as League members gathered around his bedside. Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern, and several others expressed their joy and relief. But the moment of celebration was short-lived. Superman attempted to move his arm and failed. His gaze shifted in confusion, then horror, as he realized he couldn't feel or control the limb on his right side. Batman's expression remained unreadable, but Martian Manhunter stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. "We suspect this condition may be temporary," John said calmly. "The shadow being's attack left a gaping hole that might have disrupted your nervous system. With time, the connection may heal naturally." "May," Batman echoed. "Not definite." The room fell into tense silence. Despite the reassurances, everyone could feel the weight of uncertainty hanging over them. Sometime later, Kara was flying alone. Her thoughts raced, her heart heavy. Her cousin, her only remaining blood, the symbol of hope, may not be able to heal naturally. She couldn't just sit and wait anymore. She needed help. And there was one person who might have it. Ashbourne had a collection of magical items and even healing potions. She hopes despite everything that happened, he will be willing to help her cousin. She landed just outside the corporate tower bearing the Shadow Corp emblem. Inside, she made her way swiftly to Ashbourne's office. It was empty. "Where's Ashbourne?" she asked the nearest figure, Rex, sitting lazily. Rex barely glanced up. "Haven't seen him all day. Might still be home." Kara gave a quick nod and took off without another word. She descended silently onto the front lawn of Ashbourne's home, slowing near the entrance. Before she rang the bell, she glanced through the wall for a quick look to know if someone is inside, then froze. There, lounging on the couch, was her. The clone. Galatea. Eyes narrowed, fury bubbling inside her, Kara didn't hesitate. Instead of knocking, she smashed the front door off its hinges and bolted into the house like a comet. Galatea jumped to her feet at the sound of the door crashing open, muscles tensing. What the hell? And then they stood face to face. Galatea's eyes narrowed. What are you doing here? This should be my question, Kara snapped. You broke into someone's house. Galatea crossed her arms. You're the one who broke in. I live here now. In your dreams, I will help Ashbourne get rid of a thief, Kara growled, raising her fists. Galatea scoffed. And what makes you think he didn't invite me to stay? Kara's glare sharpened. He wouldn't allow a dangerous clone in. Too bad for you, Galatea said with a smug grin. He did. I'm living here now. Go ask him if you don't believe me. Kara faltered, just for a moment. Why would he? She paused, then blurted, Did he adopt you too? Galatea blinked, momentarily stunned. Why does everyone think that? She muttered, then smirked slyly. While I don't mind calling him Daddy, no. He didn't adopt me. I think children need a mother. And I got the pleasure of being one. Kara's face twisted in disgust. No. He couldn't possibly choose you. Galatea's expression turned conceited and sharp. Why not? Look at me, what not to like? I am the better version of you. You heard him, from the dream, didn't you? I'm the hotter one. Too bad for you, I beat you to him. Kara snapped. Her fists clenched, her body lunged forward, but Galatea was faster. A powerful uppercut connected with Kara's jaw, lifting her off her feet and sending her crashing through the ceiling in a spray of debris and broken tile. Galatea glared at the hole Kara left behind. Both the ceiling and door on her, she muttered before flying after Supergirl through the hole in the ceiling. Soon a thunderous crash shook the sky above the villa as the two girls clashed midair, fists flying, shockwaves rippling with every strike. But it didn't take long for history to repeat itself. As it had 2 days before, Galatea quickly gained the upper hand. Her blows were more precise, her reflexes sharper, and was more skilled. Supergirl tried to fight back, but each swing of her fist was answered with 2 more from Galatea, until a final, brutal punch sent her plummeting toward the earth. Supergirl hit the ground hard, carving a crater into the lawn near the villa. She coughed, wheezing, limbs trembling as she tried to rise. Galatea landed beside her, arms crossed. If you've got a problem, go find Ashbourne, she said coldly. Don't bother me with your stupid temper. No wonder he doesn't want anything to do with you. With that, she turned her back on the battered Kryptonian and flew back toward the house. Supergirl didn't move at first. She just sat there, shoulders slumped, dirt and bruises covering her body and soul alike. After what felt like an eternity, she finally lifted off, flying away slowly, quietly, as if the weight of defeat was chaining her to the wind. From the villa, Galatea stood behind a window pane, arms resting against the frame. She watched Supergirl's limp figure vanish into the sky, and a satisfied smile curled her lips. Tormenting her original was turning out to be delightfully therapeutic. The clouds above Shadow Corp parted slightly as Supergirl hovered above them, eyes locked on the building below. Her gaze was fixed on a single office window, waiting, watching. And then, he appeared. Ashbourne stepped into view, eyes focused on his tablet. Supergirl lowered herself to the window and knocked gently. Ashbourne turned, raising a brow. With a casual flick, he tapped his desk, and the glass pane slid open silently. Supergirl floated in and landed without a word. Ashbourne's eyes took her in, bruised, bloodied, dirt-covered. Her lip was split, and her breathing shallow. He leaned forward, mildly curious. What were you doing to get so roughed up? Supergirl's answer was as bitter as it was short. You're home. Ashbourne's brow lifted slightly in realization. He beat you up, huh? So, why were you looking for me? She didn't answer him immediately. Her mind paused on the way he called her clone. There are close enough for him to call her T. She asked, is what she said true? She's living in your home now? And you want her to be with Ace and Amazo? Without hesitation, Ashbourne nodded. Yes, while she is not that competent, she can learn with time. Do me a favor and don't share that around, it'd be annoying if everyone knew. Her hands clenched into fists. That was all she needed to hear. Galatea hadn't lied. Supergirl stared at him, grief flickering across her face before it melted into anger. Ashbourne watched her silently. She really hates her clone, more than I thought. He noted to himself. Then, unexpectedly, she took a deep breath and steadied herself. Her voice was quieter now, almost cold. I won't tell anyone about this, if you give me a potion. Like the one you gave Mr. Freeze. Ashbourne's eyes narrowed slightly, his head tilting. The words didn't sit right with him. Her tone was off. There was something calculated behind those eyes that wasn't usually there. It felt like a threat, even if she hadn't said it that way. For a moment, he considered calling it out. But then, he looked at her again, battered, bruised, angry, and he waved the thought away. She was probably just exhausted and angry. Without a word, he opened a drawer, retrieved a vial of red liquid, and held it out to her. Supergirl took it without a thank you, without a glance, and flew off as quietly as she came. Ashbourne stood there, watching the empty space where she had been. Something was wrong. He knew it. But he turned back to his desk, closed the window, and went back to work. Nearly 2 months had passed since the fall of Lex Luthor. Thanks to Ashbourne's potion, Superman made a full and miraculous recovery. One moment, he had been a broken shell with a possibility to be crippled for life, and the next, he stood strong, as if the ordeal had never touched him. Superman had intended to visit Ashbourne personally to thank him for the potion, but someone kept him away. Kara. When she returned, it was clear she had been through something harrowing. Her smile didn't reach her eyes anymore. She was bruised and tattered, but she brushed off every concern with an almost mechanical insistence that she was fine. More troubling, however, was the way she acted regarding Ashbourne. The cousin who once spoke often and fondly of him now refused to even say his name. She threw herself into superhero work with a fanatical obsession that unsettled even Superman. When he finally confronted her about it, she stood stiff and stubborn, her voice hard. I was beaten by my clone, she said flatly. I was even shown mercy by her. I am the real one. I won't allow my clone to be stronger than me, better than me. Superman tried to pry further, wondering if Kara had run into Galatea again after the battle on the watchtower, but she clammed up, walls built brick by brick before his eyes. With her unwillingness to speak and her tunnel vision toward heroism, he was left only with worry. Meanwhile, the world outside spun on. Cadmus, still alive and active, adapted carefully. Amanda Waller, once obsessed with viewing the Justice League as a looming threat, shifted her strategy. Now, her eyes turned to a new danger, the Shadow Monarch and his soldiers. She still prepared weapons, still engineered contingencies, but now, Cadmus whispered of alliances instead of wars. She viewed the Justice League as the best potential ally against what was to come. And in Ashbourne's house, life flowed with quiet, gentle rhythms. In Ashbourne's home, an eclectic spread of food, piled high with everything from spicy tacos to rainbow-colored cakes, decorated the long table. It looked more like a royal banquet than a casual gathering, but for Ashbourne, this was a moment worth celebrating. Today marked a milestone, the celebration of Amazo's newly developed taste buds. Ashbourne stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, grin radiating pride. Taste, he declared, is one of the greatest pleasures of life, and one of the root causes for people to sin. That's why it matters. He had pestered Amazo for months to evolve himself further and experience the culinary arts like mortals do. And finally, the android had done it. Sitting front and center, Amazo looked surprisingly eager. His eyes scanned the table before he reached forward, grabbed a triple-stacked burger, and bit into it. His face lit up instantly. Amazo's expression, a blend of childlike wonder and mechanical fascination, was so pure that Ashbourne couldn't help but nod in deep approval. There it is, he said, pleased. The beginning of a beautiful descent into indulgence. Ace, seated beside him, chuckled. He's actually genuinely smiling, she said, watching Amazo devour plate after plate with an energy uncharacteristic of a being once capable of ending worlds. Meanwhile, T and Rex looked far less convinced. The two exchanged glances before Rex held his temples tiredly. I'm not sure what's more concerning, Rex muttered, how surreal our lives become, or the fact that a god-tier android is becoming a gluttonous gourmet. T arched a brow. That's exactly what I'm worried about. A superweapon with an appetite sounds like a recipe for disaster. Ashbourne waved a hand dismissively. You two are overreacting. It's just a child discovering food for the first time. You have serious mental issues, T replied flatly. Ashbourne gave a nonchalant shrug. I am not as bad as you make me out to be. Ace grinned as Amazo reached for his 7th course. Okay, but seriously, how much can he eat? He's already downed enough for 5 people. Ashbourne tilted his head, intrigued. Good question. You know, maybe I should help him register for an eating competition. Rex groaned. Please don't. That's cheating on a whole new level. Just then, Ashbourne's phone rang. He plucked it from his coat, glanced at the caller ID, and answered with a smirk. Hi, Harley. I've been doing fine. And you? Oh, that sounds nice. You got it, girl. Of course, you're always welcome to visit. We can talk then. He ended the call and turned to the table, still smiling. Harley Quinn will be dropping by later. She's bringing her new girlfriend, Poison Ivy. Ace simply nodded. T raised a brow. Rex, on the other hand, covered his face with one hand and let out an exasperated sigh. This is getting worse by the day. T tapped her chin. I wonder how he turned out like that. Ashbourne leaned back in his chair, arms behind his head. I turned out just fine. Thank you, no, Rex said. It's Arthur's fault, his blood uncle. He used to act like that all the time, and Ashbourne picked up his habits. Ashbourne chuckled, eyes drifting to the ceiling as he let himself fall into a memory, when he played the role of his uncle Arthur Black. And with Amazo happily reaching for yet another slice of pizza and Rex groaning into his hand, the celebration continued. Ashbourne smiled. His life was getting better by the day, and now he had a friend coming to visit. The sun had dipped just below the horizon, casting a soft amber hue across the estate. Inside the living room, Ace, T, and Rex sprawled comfortably on the couches, their eyes fixed on the large screen. A brand new show, recently produced by Shadow Corp, flickered to life, a sci-fi drama laced with social commentary and dark humor. Popcorn bowls sat half-eaten, and the volume buzzed low in the background. So, you really green-lit a TV show just to make fun of heroes and aliens adoption? Rex asked, tilting his head. Ace shrugged with a smirk. It sounded fun, and honestly, I think the original one was better, but the Justice League heroes were offended. T crossed her arms, only half listening. Her eyes occasionally flicked toward the window. Ashbourne and Amazo had stepped outside a while ago at the android's request, and curiosity itched at her. Eventually, the sound of their voices caught her attention, low, distant, but her super hearing was enough for her to pick every single word. Outside, in the glow of the garden lanterns, Ashbourne walked side by side with Amazo. Ashbourne glanced at the android with a curious look. So, he said, hands tucked in his pockets, what do you want to talk about? Amazo looked ahead, face calm yet deliberate. I wanted to thank you for taking me in, and for showing me a new path. Ashbourne blinked in mild surprise, then chuckled. You're most welcome, but you didn't need to drag me out here just to thank me. Amazo nodded slowly. How long can I continue living here? I understand that it is not normal for an android to stay like this. Ashbourne turned fully to face him, expression softening. I adopted you, didn't I? That means you are my son, and this is your home. Always will be. Don't overthink it. No one in this house is normal, anyway. Well, except for your grandpa Rex. And even he's cool with you. Amazo's lips tugged into a warm, genuine smile. It was the most human he had ever looked. Ashbourne's grin widened at the sight. Now that you've got taste, Ashbourne said, gesturing with one hand, we need to work on your other senses. Touch, smell, and maybe, one day, genitals. Who knows? Maybe I'll finally get to be called Grandpa. Amazo blinked, face caught somewhere between processing and mild confusion. Then he nodded. I will not disappoint you. As for grandchildren, I can create a child android now if you want. Ashbourne nodded in proud approval. That's my son, but let's wait till you are older. Amazo paused, tilting his head slightly. What about T? Is she going to stay like this, or is she going to be our sister? Ashbourne chuckled, then shook his head. I don't plan on adopting her. I thought about it at first, I admit, but her looks don't help with that. And, she's got some peculiar kinks. I fear it can make the adoption awkward. Amazo tilted his head again, clearly puzzled. T heard it all. What had started as a casual interest quickly spiraled into a whirlwind of disbelief. At first, it was warm, almost touching, an android learning to say thank you, Ashbourne being, surprisingly, a decent parent figure. But then, genitals? Children? Android grandchildren? T's eye twitched. And then came her name. T froze as Amazo asked if she was going to be a sister, only to hear Ashbourne casually explain her looks were a blocker to the adoption plan and worse, that she had peculiar kinks. Her face morphed from passive confusion to absolute horror, then rage. Her mouth opened slightly, stunned. What the hell is that bastard teaching his son? She hissed under her breath, face red with a mix of embarrassment and fury. The show on TV continued playing, laughter echoing from the screen. But T wasn't watching anymore. She was plotting how to beat Ashbourne up. 2 days passed in the strange black family in dysfunctional peace. The sun had barely crested noon when the doorbell rang. Amazo, dressed in his usual human form and casual attire, opened the door. Standing outside were 2 women, one in a red and black leather jacket with blonde pigtails and a wide grin, and the other in a leaf-patterned green bodysuit, her red hair cascading like ivy itself. Harley Quinn's eyes widened. Ashy. You got younger. Amazo blinked once, then replied in a polite monotone, You must be referring to father. I am Amazo. And you must be Harley Quinn and Pamela Isley. Please, come in. Oh. Harley had an amused look on her face. You are the son, got it. I must say I didn't know Ashy had a son. They followed Amazo through the halls until they reached the living room. Inside sat Ashbourne, Ace, and T. Poor Rex had been left back at Shadow Corp to take care of work, as Ashbourne decided to take time off at home and wait for his visitors. The moment Harley saw Ashbourne, she lit up, her grin widening. Ashy. You didn't tell me you had a son that old, she cackled. You were a very naughty boy. Ashbourne smirked, arms crossed. I was actually quite well behaved. Amazo is adopted. He's also the most advanced android in the world. Harley raised a skeptical brow at Amazo. This? An android? Without hesitation, Amazo shifted into his towering 3-meter golden form, radiant and imposing. Then, with a soft humming sound, he reverted to his human appearance. Harley let out a long whistle. Now that's a son worthy of adopting. Ashbourne grinned. I know, right? His eyes turned to the woman beside Harley. Dr. Isley. It's nice to finally meet you. I've heard of your eco-terrorist work for a very long time. Pamela gave a small smile, composed and elegant. Nice to meet you too. Harley's spoken about you a lot. I hope all good things, Ashbourne replied with a raised brow. Pamela glanced sideways at Harley. Depends on the perspective. But from what I've seen so far. She offered a small nod. She wasn't wrong. Ashbourne gave a small chuckle, then gestured toward Ace. You probably know her, but no harm in a reintroduction. This is Ace. Harley gave a sheepish wave. Sorry about the bad stuff I said when we were with the Joker. Wasn't thinking straight. Ace shrugged. It's fine. Then Ashbourne motioned toward the quiet blonde in the corner. And this is Galatea. She prefers to be called T. T gave a bored nod. Harley, however, stepped closer, staring at her as if trying to place a memory. T arched an eyebrow. Something wrong. Harley tilted her head. You look familiar. Very familiar. Ashbourne, still in his seat and tone flat, said she's an aged clone of Supergirl. And be careful, she has all the powers and the temper. Harley's eyes went wide, then flicked back to Ashbourne. You adopted a clone of Supergirl too? You've got an impressive adopting streak. T groaned. Again. I'm not adopted. Why does everyone assume that? Harley looked back to Ashbourne, silently asking for confirmation. He simply shrugged. She's not suited for adoption, she is peculiar. Ended up becoming the chauffeur. Drives Amazo and Ace to and from school. T's eye twitched hearing him. She knew that peculiar was going to be something else. Harley blinked. The android goes to school? Ashbourne nodded with a chuckle. Top of his class. That sent Harley into a fit of giggles. She nudged Pamela. See? Told ya. It's fun around here. Where else do you find this strangely functioning family? Pamela just sighed, rubbing the bridge of her nose. I genuinely don't know. Harley's grin grew even wider. She turned back to Ashbourne, mischief brewing in her eyes. Hey, can you adopt me too? Ashbourne tilted his head. Why? She shrugged. Sounds crazier that way. I dunno. Fun. Ashbourne leaned back thoughtfully, tapping his chin. T let out a deep, dramatic groan. Please, no. Before Ashbourne could say anything else, Pamela cleared her throat and stepped forward. Can we not go into the adoption thing now? We came here to talk about a business. She gave Harley a sideways glance. If she let her clown girlfriend keep steering the conversation, they'd never get around to business. Ashbourne raised an eyebrow. And just like that, the tone began to shift. Ashbourne waved his hand casually, gesturing toward the chairs surrounding the coffee table in the middle of the living room. Let's hear your business, he said, his tone calm, inviting, yet held undeniable authority. Pamela sat gracefully, legs crossed. I have a new project, it's called the Green Spine, she began. An eco-arcology that will be entirely self-sustaining. It will clean air, recycle water, generate its own power through bioengineered plant systems, and even house food farms and green tech startups. Ashbourne listened in silence, his fingers interlaced. Pamela continued. There will be a cash return, but the real value lies in the long-term gains. Public relations, exclusive biotech patents, and access to a new field of influence. It could become a recruitment hub for future scientists, green engineers, even metahumans who care about restoring the environment. Ashbourne tilted his head slightly, eyes narrowing. And what made you think I'd agree to something like this? Before Pamela could answer, Harley leaned forward, propping her elbows on her knees and grinning. I did, she said. You don't care if someone used to be a villain, so if they're not stabbing you in the back and Pam's not, I figured you would agree. This is a fair trade. She gets resources, you get return and benefits. Sounded like something you'd go for. Ashbourne chuckled. Very well, he said. But let's do it the proper way. Dr. Isley, take your time. Draft a formal proposal and plan. I want specifics, exact goals, projected timelines, required funding, everything. We'll decide after I've seen that. Pamela gave a small, relieved smile. I was already working on one. You'll have it in 2 days. Ashbourne nodded approvingly. If you're working for me, I guarantee I won't allow any hero to interfere due to your past. You'll be under my protection. But... His smile vanished, and a subtle shift in the room's atmosphere made everything feel heavier. His next words were delivered evenly, yet each syllable was laced with power. If you try to start some plant kingdom under my nose, or decide humans are good only as plant fertilizer, you won't like what's coming your way. His smile returned instantly. Just a warning. I sincerely hope we can work together without trouble. Pamela's heart stuttered. She wasn't new to threats, or men who postured for control. But something about Ashbourne was different. He didn't move. He didn't raise his voice. And yet she felt colder than she had in years, as if his presence alone pressed down on her lungs. She swallowed and stood slowly. Thank you, she said with a strained voice. Harley blinked, watching her girlfriend with mild concern. Her eyes flicked between Pamela's stiff back and Ashbourne's pleasant and relaxed smile. Welp, Harley said, hopping to her feet with a bounce. We should totally go drinking sometime. Shake off all the formalities. She gave the others a cheery wave and followed Pamela out the door, glancing back just once at Ashbourne. Once they were gone, T asked, "What did you do to her?" She looked scared by the end. Ashbourne remained seated. "I did nothing." T rolled her eyes. "Aha. Right." She stared at him for a moment, then asked bluntly, "Are you really going to fund Poison Ivy?" Ashbourne shrugged. "Why not? Worst case scenario, she backstabs me." He paused, eyes gleaming faintly. "In that case, I'll take over her work and get rid of her." T gave him a sidelong glance. "You're messed up." Ashbourne just smiled. "I am not." Ace, who had been silent, finally spoke. "Why would she choose plants over humans?" Ashbourne glanced at her, his expression softening slightly. "Poison Ivy, or Dr. Pamela Isley, believes plants are pure, uncorrupted by greed, malice, or war. She sees humanity as a virus to the earth, polluting, overpopulating, destroying. To her, choosing plants isn't betrayal, it's loyalty. Loyalty to the earth." Ace looked down, thoughtful. "But aren't humans part of Earth too?" "She doesn't see it that way," Ashbourne replied. "To her, we're invaders on a host body. She used to think wiping us out was the cure. Now she believes in wiping the bad apples among us." He leaned back in his chair, a small smirk tugging at his lips. "Funny thing, if you really think about it, we're the ones who need protection from plants. They give us oxygen to grow, keep us alive long enough to thrive, and when we die, we rot and feed them. It's the long game." Ace gave a slow, curious nod. "So, they keep us alive just to eat us in the end." T paused mid-sip of her drink, her head turning slowly toward Ashbourne. She squinted. "Yup. You're messed up." Ashbourne chuckled, not the least bit offended. "Just a little perspective." The evening sun cast long shadows across the black villa as its master sat in the living room, a thick, neatly bound document resting on his lap. The proposal was extensive, pages of schematics, cost projections, environmental impact analyses, logistics, and timelines. Pamela Isley had delivered on her promise. Every detail of the Green Spine project was accounted for. Ashbourne's fingers tapped thoughtfully on the margin. It was impressive, more so than most corporate pitches he'd read. The environmental benefits were undeniable. The economic prospects, while modest, came with hidden value in patents, recruitment, and long-term brand expansion. But there was one glaring issue. The land. Pamela had suggested a location near Gotham. And Ashbourne, without needing to think twice, had decided absolutely not. He didn't trust Gotham's chaos not to interfere. His thoughts drifted to the outskirts of Metropolis. The land was cheaper and came with fewer potential attacks. The only issue? The soil. It was lifeless, dry, and incapable of supporting the type of greenery Pamela envisioned. But that could be fixed. He was still reading when T strolled into the room, balancing a drink and a bowl of snacks. She gave him a playful smirk. "You work even at home. You're no fun." Ashbourne blinked at her. "I think you should work more. At this rate, you'll become a fat bum." T froze, her face slowly contorting into a scowl. She raised her middle finger without a word. Ashbourne raised his hand. Ruler's authority rippled through the room like a silent wave, wrapping around her body like invisible chains. T stiffened, eyes wide. "I can't have you corrupting my innocent children," Ashbourne said solemnly. "They're in their rooms, and you are the only source of corruption around here," T growled, unable to move. "Amazo can hear and see everything." T's scowl deepened. "He is an android." Ashbourne stood. "You've been lazy lately. For your own good, you're coming with me." In a blink, the living room vanished. They reappeared on the edge of a vast, barren field, miles outside Metropolis. The wind was cool, the air smelled of dust and weeds. T looked around, confused. "You can teleport?" "I have many talents," Ashbourne replied casually. She raised an eyebrow. "Why'd you bring us here?" "I'm buying this land tomorrow," Ashbourne said, surveying the area. T blinked. And Ashbourne smiled. We need to prepare it for Pamela's project. She stared at him, not moving, waiting for the next part. Ashbourne raised a hand. A shovel materialized out of thin air and landed in her arms. T looked from the shovel to the barren land. You want me to dig? We need to remove the current topsoil and rocks, then replace it with red soil. That'll make it suitable. Don't you have people to do this? Why bring me? Ashbourne shrugged. Because you can be super digging girl, way faster than normal humans. Also, you've gained weight. This'll help you burn it off. Her face twisted from confusion into pure, unfiltered rage. I'm not gaining weight, she snarled. Then prove me wrong. Move faster. I am not doing this alone. Ashbourne shook his head, clearly disappointed. Fine, you lazy bum. He lifted his hand again. A shimmering globe of purple energy surrounded them. No one can spy on us now. From the shadow at his feet, darkness churned and twisted. Hundreds of humanoid figures rose, faceless beings made of ink-black shadow, each holding a shovel in hand. T's mouth fell open. Her eyes narrowed. You are? Yes, Ashbourne said, not needing her to finish. The shadows silently moved to work, digging in perfect synchronicity. T kept staring at them. You have an army of creepy shovel-holding shadow minions, and the best thing you can come up with for them is digging. They are also soldiers for cleanup duty, Ashbourne said, folding his arms. Why do you think the house is always spotless and dust-free? T looked genuinely stunned. I thought Amazo was cleaning when I wasn't looking. Ashbourne sighed. You're hopeless. T's eye twitched. What? How am I supposed to know that? Ashbourne replied, your room is getting cleaned up when you are driving Amazo and Ace to school. Your laundry is getting done. Even the underwear you left on the floor of your room was cleaned and put back in its place. Did you not wonder how that happened? Who was doing it? T was stunned and then said, my underwear? Ashbourne replied, my shadows are diligent and tireless, and the only time I heard them feeling tired about something was when mentioning you. One even said you could learn from Ace and Amazo. Congratulations, you are a handful even for a tireless shadow. T's face turned red hearing that. Ashbourne smiled as if satisfied by her state and pointed to the shovel in her hand. T looked back at the shovel in her hand, then at the tireless shadows digging away. Fine, she muttered. But if I find out one of them tried to peep on me in the shower, I'm burning them all. That's your concern? Oh, trust me, they have no interest in you at all, Ashbourne replied with a faint smirk. The stars began to peek through the sky as the shadows and T dug deeper into the earth, preparing the soil for Pamela's vision. The morning sun rose over Metropolis, casting golden light on a pair that looked wildly out of place together. Ashbourne walked with an expression of deathly boredom, hands buried in his coat pockets, while T led the charge, storming through store after store with the determination of a general on a warpath. After an entire night of digging, moving soil, and being surrounded by a shadow army of shoveling minions, T had discovered her favorite outfit stained and torn beyond salvation. Naturally, she dragged Ashbourne out at the crack of dawn to suffer for it. This is the third store, Ashbourne mumbled, trailing behind her as she vanished into yet another boutique. And it won't be the last. T called back, arms already full of bags from the previous two. She flitted from one display to another, snatching tops, skirts, jeans, and jackets like a whirlwind. When T was finally satisfied, they stepped out into the street, the breeze warm and the sun bright overhead. Ashbourne walked beside her, carrying several of her bags like an assistant. That was a pain, he muttered. T scoffed. That's the least you can do after your late-night activity. You ruined my clothes. It wasn't that bad, Ashbourne said. You got to move, sweat a little and enjoy yourself late at night. What more do you need? T gave him a sideways glare, her lips twitching. Only you would say that, you dirty asshole. Ashbourne let out a long, dramatic sigh. I am a normal person with normal aspirations. But I suppose I shouldn't expect understanding from someone with peculiar interests. T's head snapped toward him. Peculiar interests. Don't act all innocent now, kinky girl, Ashbourne said with a slight smirk. T growled, nearly stomping her foot. You are the pervert here. Ashbourne shrugged. Sure, keep telling yourself that. T raised a bag threateningly like she might hit him over the head with it, but instead rolled her eyes and kept walking. Ashbourne walked on in silence, staring at the city ahead of him. He didn't say it out loud, but he knew this was what balance looked like, chaos wrapped in sarcasm, stitched together by mutual disdain and strange affection. He could get used to it. Maybe. High above the skyscrapers, Supergirl hovered in the air. She had been patrolling the city early in the morning when her gaze landed on Ashbourne and her clone walking side by side. She couldn't resist eavesdropping on them, and the more she listened, the angrier she grew. She didn't need to hear the details to know what late-night activity the two were talking about. And for a moment, she wanted to swoop down and declare that she wasn't worse than her clone, that she was better. But she held back. As furious as she was, she feared making a fool of herself even more than she already had. A week passed in the blink of an eye, and with it came the long-awaited visit. Ashbourne stood at the edge of the sprawling construction site just outside Metropolis. Pamela Isley and Harley Quinn stepped out of the transport vehicle Ashbourne had sent for them, both women blinking at the surreal sight in front of them. Pamela's eyes widened, genuinely stunned. "You have got to be kidding me," she muttered, taking a few steps forward. "You already bought the land? Fixed the soil? Construction is already in progress." Ashbourne nodded, calm as ever. "Correct." Pamela turned to him, still reeling. "How did you do this? It's too fast. This should have taken weeks just to begin." Ashbourne gave a slight smirk. "A mix of magic and super digging girl." Pamela blinked, confused. Super digging girl. Harley, who had just finished checking out a half-constructed dome, perked up. "That sounds interesting. Who the hell is super digging girl?" Ashbourne raised a finger and said proudly, "A blonde, lazy alien clone living in my house, with a shovel in her hand." It took a moment, but Pamela suddenly remembered. "Oh, the Kryptonian clone?" Harley burst into laughter. "The original was forced into construction work, right? And the clone becomes a digger. You really do know how to put him to work." Ashbourne gave a nonchalant shrug while Pamela finally let a smile slip. Her eyes scanned the progress again, this time with a glint of genuine optimism. "At this pace, how long do you think until it's done?" she asked softly. 6 months at most," Ashbourne replied confidently. Pamela's lips parted slightly, eyes gleaming. 6 months. She whispered, her excitement breaking through her usual composure. Ashbourne, however, tilted his head, watching her carefully. "So, are you going to continue being a Gotham villain after this?" Pamela froze. Harley's voice cut in without hesitation. "Of course she is. She's my partner." Ashbourne looked at them both, then said matter-of-factly, "In that case, her name will be left out of the project. She can manage and oversee it, but not officially. And Harley, this project will take considerable time from Pamela. She might not be as available as she is now." The words sank like stones in the silence that followed. Harley slowly turned to look at Pamela, frowning. "So, what happens to the two of us? You're gonna stay in Metropolis while I stay in Gotham." Ashbourne didn't flinch. "As I said, she can work unofficially, that can be done from Gotham. That part isn't a problem. But the reality is, she'll have less time to participate in whatever you're up to, Harley. I'd suggest, for the next few months, you find some other individuals to join your Chaos Brigade, give Pamela time to work on what she loves." Harley raised a brow at him. "Are you a relationship counselor now?" Ashbourne shrugged. "I was the one who suggested you contact Pamela in the first place. I consider your relationship a personal project I need to groom." Harley blinked, then laughed. "You're insane." Ashbourne gave a small smile. "You're welcome." The door clicked shut behind him as Ashbourne stepped into his home. The afternoon light slanted through the wide windows. He walked inside and there, right where he expected her, T sprawled across the couch, one leg dangling off the side, eyes fixed on the TV with a remote resting loosely in her hand. She didn't glance his way as he entered, just let out a faint, "You're early." Ashbourne settled into a nearby chair. "Pamela liked the progress," he said plainly. "She wanted me to thank you for the help. On the other hand, Harley thinks you've got a bright future as super digging girl." T groaned, tossing the remote at him. He caught it effortlessly. She commented, "You're really going all in with the Green Lady project, huh?" Her eyes lingered on him, not in annoyance, but in something quieter. Thoughtful. "Sometimes I really wonder what's up with you. What do you want, Ashbourne? Do you have a dream or something you're chasing?" Ashbourne didn't reply at first. He leaned back, crossing one leg over the other. Why the sudden interest? T sat up a little straighter, arms wrapped around her knees now. "I've been here for months," she said softly. "And I like it. I really do. The peace, the calm, even the weirdness of this place. But I don't feel like I have a purpose. I'm not that different from a Mazo, if you think about it. Just a living weapon with nothing to aim at. So I wonder, what about you? What do you really want? Where are you going with all of this?" Ashbourne was quiet again. Then, almost with a note of surprise, he said, "You know, you're the first person to ask me that." He stood, walking slowly toward the window, hands tucked behind his back. "The truth is, I'm not that different from you, Ace, or Amazo. For most of my life in this world, I had no purpose. I just existed. I enjoyed myself, searched for entertainment, indulged anything I could find, watched the world burn and rebuild. It was all background noise as long the process of my entertainment continued." He turned his head slightly, the light catching his eyes. "But over time, Uncle Rex grew on me. His care for me, his odd sense of honor and responsibility, the way he carried himself. I began to appreciate him. Then Ace came along, broken, cold, and a future stolen from her. She reminded me of myself. I understood her misery, her suffering, and I pitied her. That's why I took her in. Amazo had no purpose either, just like I didn't. So I took him in as well." Ashbourne turned back to face her, his voice low and firm. "You could say that now, I only want to watch them grow, to build a better life for themselves. I want to see them break from the cycles that trap them. And they are moving forward. Every day. For that I am proud of them." She looked at him in silence, then asked, "What about me?" There was a rare look in her eyes, earnest, open, vulnerable. Ashbourne tilted his head slightly and smiled. "Because you walked away. Because the moment you realized you weren't truly chained, you took the reins of your life. And that's something I respect." T held his gaze, her usual cocky smirk absent. Ashbourne sat back down, his voice quieter now. "T, I've lived long, longer than you realize. I've fought, killed, bled, and watched destruction and death on a scale you can't begin to imagine. I watched one of the cruelest cycles spin to its bitter end. I've seen those who were created to bring justice twist themselves with hatred. I've seen what beings become when they pursue purpose above all else, how depraved, how blind. I know what it truly means to be chained without a choice in life, and I witnessed the end when all that remain is desolation and silence." He exhaled. His voice for the first time had a hint of sorrow. "And after all of it, after everything I've seen and endured, I came recently to one conclusion about our existence." He looked her directly in the eye. "Our existence only has value in the bonds we make. In the moment we live in. That's the only thing worth anything. Not power, not justice, not purpose. Just the connections and the moment we live in. That's what matters. That's what shapes us. We live to watch and affect others, to be affected by them. And when we die, the only proof we were ever here is in how they remember us, in how they tell our story." She stared at him for a long time. And for once, she didn't have a snarky comment. Only silence. And maybe, just maybe, a flicker of understanding. Nearly 2 years had passed. Ace and Amazo both graduated from school, celebrating a milestone that felt enormous. Soon, they would begin university, a prospect that had Ace practically bouncing off the walls. She was thrilled at the thought of seeing Courtney Whitmore regularly again. Though the two stayed in contact, it hadn't been the same since Courtney graduated a year earlier. Amazo, too, had changed. He no longer wore the emotionless mask of a machine. He smiled. He sighed in exasperation when Ace dragged him into shopping sprees. He even expressed pity for sitcom characters during TV nights. The cold, relentless android he once was had melted away, leaving behind something almost human. Even Galatea found herself drawn into the peaceful life. Once cloned to life for combat and control, she now drove Ace and Amazo back and forth from school, offering advice and joining them in everyday errands. Her voice mattered in the house, her thoughts welcomed and valued. Galatea developed a fondness for old Rex, whose cowardly sarcasm and constant worrying became a source of daily amusement. Despite his endless complaints, Rex never left, a fact Galatea appreciated more than she admitted. All three of them, Ace, Amazo, and Galatea, knew they owed it all to Ashbourne. He had taken them in when the world wanted nothing but to get rid of them. He gave them shelter, a future, and something even rarer, trust. It was only natural that they decided to throw a surprise party for his 25th birthday. They sent out the invitations with care. Old friends, new ones, even the unlikely. Hive Rex and the 4 ex-villains of the Hive were first to RSVP, eager to reunite. Victor Fries and his beloved wife were coming too, the good doctor finding a rare pocket of happiness in his once tragic life. And then, perhaps most surprisingly, Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy, or Pamela, as she now allowed close friends to call her, accepted with delight. Harley had become a regular voice in Ashbourne's life, calling him randomly to chat about her latest escapades, her motley crew, and all the bizarre things Gotham offered. On the other hand, Pamela appreciated Ashbourne. He was the reason why she and Harley became a thing, and he was the one to help her fund her environment without worrying about funds or profit. Now, the house buzzed with activity as the guests waited eagerly. Rex leaned back in his chair, arms folded as he mused aloud. "You ever notice," he said with a smirk, "that all Ashbourne's closest friends are villains or ex-villains? It's like he's allergic to good people." Harley burst out laughing. "Of course he is. That guy would have been a top-tier supervillain, you know. Real shame he refused to be my second-in-command." She winked mischievously. A chorus of chuckles and murmured agreements followed. There was a collective understanding in the room. Ashbourne was something unique. The man who had dragged the Justice League to court not once but twice, and won both times, who had humiliated Earth's greatest heroes without even trying to. If he wanted to, he could have shaken the world. Instead, he chose peace. And today, they would celebrate that choice and the man who made it possible for them all to have second chances. As Amazo prepared to teleport Ashbourne home, the group waited with smiles and hidden party hats, ready to show him just how much he meant to them. Soon, a brilliant flash of light illuminated the living room, and from it emerged Ashbourne and Amazo. The room instantly erupted into loud cheers and shouts. "Happy birthday!" The group of questionable but very eager characters screamed in surprise and excitement. Ashbourne blinked once, caught off guard by the sudden noise, but then smiled warmly. "Thank you," he said, genuinely touched. Before he could even properly step into the room, the strange crowd began rushing him with their gifts, an odd, chaotic parade of colorful packages and makeshift wrapping jobs. Among the pile of presents, one stood out above all. Harley Quinn, with a proud, mischievous grin on her face, dragged forward a large, velvet-lined case. Pamela followed with a slightly more subdued, but equally pleased expression. With a theatrical bow, Harley flung the case open. Inside was a stunning set of antique daggers and swords, each weapon gleaming with dozens of embedded gems that shimmered under the house lights. "Ta-da!" Harley cried. "Got 'em from Gotham's museum. Don't worry, Ashy. I made sure to cover my tracks real good. You can keep 'em without a worry." Rex, standing nearby, looked absolutely horrified. His jaw dropped as he stared at what could only be described as a priceless historical treasure now sitting casually in Ashbourne's living room. And then, he witnessed the unthinkable. Ashbourne smiled, entirely unfazed, and thanked Harley warmly. "It's a very thoughtful gift. Thank you, Harley, Pamela." Rex was still frozen in place, looking like he was about to have a stroke, when he overheard Bill Numerous grinning and whispering to the others, "Maybe we should have gone back to crime for a day. Could have gotten a better gift." The others nodded along in agreement, completely serious. Even the stoic Victor Fries seemed to give a faint, almost regretful nod, as if pondering what relic he could have stolen to top Harley's contribution. T, noticing the expression of pure horror on Rex's face, sidled up to him with a teasing grin. "Uncle Rex," she whispered, "if you want, we can go on a museum heist together. Just the two of us. Bet we can bring even better stuff." Rex flinched backward immediately, waving his hands. "No. No way. I'm not a criminal." T sighed dramatically, shaking her head. "You're no fun, skipping out on a heist." The whole room burst into laughter at that, a chorus of ex-villains finding endless amusement in Rex's honest terror. Ashbourne leaned back slightly, watching the scene unfold with clear amusement in his eyes. This, chaotic, ridiculous, and bizarre as it was the life he had built. A family of people who once had no place, now laughing and teasing like any ordinary group of friends. As the party rolled on, with food being passed around, glasses clinking together, and stories being shared, an odd ripple of energy suddenly passed through the room. And then in an instant every single person, from Rex to Harley to T, transformed into gorillas. Massive, hairy, confused gorillas. Except for Ashbourne and Amazo, who stood exactly as they were, blinking at the sudden change. The entire room fell into stunned, confused silence, broken only when Gorilla Harley let out a loud, baffled screech, and Gorilla Rex looked down at his new hairy arms in absolute horror. Ashbourne sighed, then chuckled. So much for a quiet birthday. Pamela, blinking confused and adjusting to her newfound massive gorilla form, grunted out, "Why did we become like this?" Amazo, standing perfectly unaffected, answered in a voice, "A wave of energy has traversed the area. It has transformed your DNA into that of an ape. You are not the only ones affected. The wave is currently sweeping across the entire world, turning all humans into apes." There was a beat of stunned silence among the fur-covered group. Then Amazo turned to Ashbourne. "Should I trace the source and neutralize it?" Ashbourne stared down at the floor for 2 long seconds before shaking his head. "No need. The Justice League are already on it. You'll all be back to normal soon." Gorility stomped forward, her large hands balled into fists, her furry brow furrowed. "How soon are we talking? It's disgusting to be like this." Ashbourne gave a small, amused smile. "Give it a minute." And just as he said, slowly but surely, the transformation reversed. One by one, fur receded, limbs shrank, and human faces replaced ape-like ones. The group exhaled collectively in relief, shaking off the bizarre experience as best they could. Harley, brushing a few lingering imaginary hairs off her shoulder, turned to Ashbourne with a curious look. "Hey, how come you didn't get all monkey-fied, huh?" Amazo said it affected all humans. Harley paused, then her eyes widened dramatically. She pointed an accusing finger at Ashbourne. "You're not human." Instantly, every head in the room whipped toward Ashbourne, suspicion filling their faces except for Ace, T, and Amazo, who remained calm. Ashbourne sighed. "I am human. I just have powers. The energy wave didn't affect me because of that." Rex, still looking at him like he'd grown a second head, stepped closer. "Since when do you have powers?" Ashbourne chuckled lightly. "I've always had them. I just don't use them in my daily life, so no one knew." Rex's eyes widened even more. "You've had powers this whole time and you never thought of telling me?" Ashbourne completely unbothered. "The fewer people who know, the better. Besides, it's not like I use them." Rex crossed his arms and huffed, clearly irritated that such a major detail had been kept from him. Curious as ever, Gizmo asked, "So, what can you do?" Ashbourne smiled, a twinkle of amusement in his eyes. "A few things. Super strength, speed, invulnerability, and a few other tricks." Gizmo narrowed his eyes suspiciously. "How strong are we talking?" Everyone leaned in slightly, curiosity piqued. Ashbourne's smile widened a bit, and in a teasing, amused tone, he said, "Hard to say, but if I really give it my all, I'm without doubt the strongest being on Earth." Gizmo rolled his eyes, snorting, "Yeah, sure. And I can beat Superman with a slap." The room chuckled. Most of them clearly thought Ashbourne was either joking or exaggerating. But Ace and Amazo exchanged a brief glance. And T, standing nearby, shook her head while smiling, amused by them. They believed him. They knew better. Ashbourne clapped his hands together lightly, drawing their attention back anyway. Let's keep this between us, all right? The group all nodded in agreement. A silent pact formed among the former guerrillas. Ace's first day at university had been underwhelming. No drama, no interesting things happening or meeting interesting people, just nothing. To her, it was just a day full of boring lectures and wandering between unfamiliar buildings. But what bothered her most was that she didn't see Courtney anywhere. She had been looking forward to seeing her friend, even carrying a small present to give her. But Courtney never showed. Ace had tried contacting her multiple times, but every call went unanswered. Ace bit her lip nervously. The last time they talked, Courtney had mentioned she was on her way back from Japan and she will be there in a few hours at most. And then radio silence. Amazo, walking beside her as they exited the campus grounds, noticed her growing frustration. If she's busy, she'll contact you later, he said with a casual shrug. Heroes get caught up sometimes. But Ace wasn't having it. She immediately pulled out her phone and dialed Ashbourne. Dad, she said the moment he answered, can you find Courtney for me? I'm getting worried. Ashbourne's voice, calm as always, replied she's probably busy saving people or something. No need to worry. Dad, please find her for me, Ace said, her voice pleading. Ashbourne sighed on the other end, but didn't refuse. Within moments, he spread his shadows across the globe, searching through every crack, every hidden place. A minute later, he returned with the answer. She's fine, Ace. She's inside the Earth's core, a land called Skartaris. Some magician pulled her and a few others there to help fight a war. They'll probably be okay. He paused, then added in a more serious tone, if you really can't sit still, the path is in the North Pole. If you go, make sure your brother stays with you. Ace beamed. Thanks, Dad. You're the best. She hung up and turned toward Amazo, a wide grin stretching across her face. Amazo sighed in resignation. Without a word, he moved closer, wrapped an arm securely around her, and teleported them both away. The freezing cold of the North Pole immediately assaulted them, or it would have, if not for Amazo's barrier enveloping them in a protective bubble of warmth. Scanning the icy surroundings, Amazo quickly pinpointed the entrance Ashbourne had spoken of. Without hesitation, he flew forward, carrying Ace with him toward a cavern that seemed to lead into the very earth itself. Minutes later, they emerged into an entirely different world. Lush forests and towering mountains stretched below them. Dinosaurs, real living dinosaurs, roamed freely across the landscape. Amazo's scanner swept the region, locking onto a large mountain fortress where primitive humans seemed to have established a settlement. The two of them descended toward it. As they neared the stone gates, the humans spotted them. Immediately, a shout went up, and weapons, spears, bows, and crude clubs were raised defensively. Ace stepped forward holding up her hands. I'm just here looking for my friend, she called out. The barbarians either didn't understand her or didn't care. They surrounded the two newcomers, ready to strike. Ace sighed and turned to Amazo. Please, she asked sweetly. Amazo nodded. With a simple gesture, he released a controlled wave of energy, knocking every attacker unconscious without causing any real harm. Ace walked forward confidently, Amazo right behind her. The two approached a large central hut, even as more wary humans began to emerge from nearby structures, some wounded, some armed. At the forefront stood a fierce-looking barbarian Mun and two women by his side. They were clearly alarmed by the newcomers, tense and ready to defend. But then a familiar voice rang out. Ace? Amazo. Ace turned to see Stargirl, Courtney, rushing out from the central hut, her staff in hand, looking both surprised and relieved. Ace grinned brightly. You didn't meet me like we agreed, she said, hands on her hips. And you didn't answer my calls. So I came to check on you. She added with a teasing wink, and Dad made Amazo follow me. Extra protection and all. Amazo raised his hand in a casual greeting. Hi, he said simply. Stargirl nodded lightly in response, her expression mixed with relief and confusion. I thought Ashbourne was way stricter than my dad, she said, raising an eyebrow. How come he allowed you to come here? Ace grinned mischievously. I'm an adult now. Besides, Amazo's here, so I'm totally safe, she said, throwing a thumb toward her brother. Then she added, your turn. How did you end up here? And do you need help getting out? But Stargirl didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned around to face the barbarians and called out, "These two are friends." The leader of the barbarians, a towering man with a piece of white cloth covering his lower half, stepped forward. "Did they harm my people?" he asked gruffly. Amazo answered calmly, "They're only unconscious. I didn't use more power than necessary." The barbarian leader studied him for a moment, then nodded. He gave a sharp command, and a few warriors rushed off to check on the fallen. Meanwhile, he gestured for Ace and Amazo to follow him inside the main hall. Seated around a long table made from old wooden bones, the leader began to explain again. He spoke of Demos, an evil magician, who had started gaining power recently. According to the leader, Demos had found ways to pull weapons from the outside world, technology and tools that didn't belong in Skartaris. His goal was simple: to conquer the land and enslave all who lived there. "That's why we pulled heroes from your world," the leader said gravely. "We need all the help we can get." Ace looked around the hall, her eyes scanning the others present. There was Stargirl, standing proud next to her stepfather, Pat. A Green Lantern, not Hal Jordan, but someone else, a man with black skin. And Supergirl stood near the back, arms crossed, her sharp gaze focused almost solely on Ace and Amazo. Ace noticed the hostility but brushed it off. She tilted her head and said, "Well, lucky for you, Amazo and I are here now too. We'll lend a hand." She added, "The faster we finish this, the better. So, where's this Demos guy? Amazo can probably bring him down before he knows what had hit him." Amazo, for his part, didn't object. He merely nodded lightly, already calculating possibilities. The leader, however, shook his head. "Demos' magic is powerful," he warned. "Taking him down won't be that easy." Stargirl smirked and gave a confident shrug. "I don't know about that," she said. "Amazo's probably the strongest being on Earth right now. I doubt some magician's going to put up much of a fight against him." The Green Lantern, more cautious, chimed in, "It's better to stay careful. Gather more information before we jump into battle." Ace shrugged easily. "Fine by me," she said. "A little extra time here isn't the worst thing." Satisfied with the agreement, the barbarian leader decided to take them to see something important, the real reason Demos had been stirring so much trouble. He led them through winding paths inside the mountain, through an ancient cavern guarded by people, and inside it a giant door. The barbarians opened the door, and behind it was a giant rock, glowing sickly green. It didn't take long to recognize it. It was a massive chunk of kryptonite. Supergirl fell to the ground instantly, prompting the Green Lantern to close the door quickly. Barely moments after they discovered the massive chunk of kryptonite, a black leopard darted into the cavern, alarming everyone. The sleek beast skidded to a halt, its body shimmering with strange magic. Before their wide eyes, the leopard transformed into a woman draped in animal skins, who stumbled forward. Before she hit the ground, the barbarian leader rushed to catch her. With a raspy breath, she whispered, "Demos is here." Then she lost consciousness. The tension in the room exploded. The group rushed outside, weapons and powers ready, only to find a full army gathering at the mountain's base. Hundreds, maybe thousands, of lizard-like humanoids, each armored and wielding weapons both ancient and high-tech, stood in neat, disciplined rows. Among them were advanced laser cannons mounted on beast-drawn carriages, gleaming menacingly in the strange light of Skartaris. The barbarian leader screamed, "Prepare to fight," as his people scrambled to defend their home. Ace stood calmly at the front, scanning the sea of enemies. She pointed toward a figure clad in red clothes, sitting atop a horse. "That guy," she said to Amazo, her voice steady. "Looks like the leader, Demos." Amazo's eyes glowed faintly as he scanned the battlefield. He nodded. "He's giving orders." Ace grinned slightly. "You grab him. I'll deal with the army." Amazo gave a slight nod. The leader turned to them, confused by their casual conversation amidst the tension. But before he could speak, Ace stepped forward. Her eyes flared with a golden intense light. She stared down the assembled army, and almost immediately, the lizard soldiers froze. Screams erupted across the battlefield as they clutched their heads, then, one by one, they dropped to the ground, unconscious. At the same moment, Amazo teleported with a flicker of energy, appearing in the middle of the lizard army. He seized Demos, who barely had time to react before slumping unconscious from Amazo's grip. In the next heartbeat, Amazo teleported back, dropping the limp magician at Ace's feet. Ace smiled casually. "Easy and quick," she said, brushing imaginary dust off her hands. The barbarian leader, the warriors, and even the Justice League members stood stunned. No one had expected the battle, a war they had braced for with blood and iron to end in mere seconds. Courtney swallowed hard, her heart thudding. She knew Ace's glares were scary, but years of friendship somehow managed to make her forget that. This was a stark reminder. The leader recovered first, roaring triumphantly, "We have won. Capture and tie our enemies." The warriors, still in a daze, erupted in cheers and quickly rushed to follow orders, moving to secure the unconscious lizard soldiers. Ace turned toward Courtney, a small sheepish smile playing on her lips. "Sorry for stealing your thunder," she said. "I just didn't want this to get messy or to stay here longer than necessary." Courtney chuckled, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Why not join the hero line of work?" she teased. "We could be partners." Ace shrugged lightly. "Not interested. I like civilian life," she said. "Besides, I doubt my dad would approve." She grinned playfully and added honestly, "I think he'd only support me if I went the villain route. He's got a soft spot for evildoers." Courtney laughed at that, shaking her head. While many around them sighed in relief that the war had ended before it even began, Supergirl stood stiffly, her eyes narrowed and full of accusation. She pointed at Ace, voice sharp. "You destroyed their minds. You can't just do that. Only a monster would be happy doing something like that." Ace didn't reply. She merely turned to Courtney, her expression flat. "What's wrong with her?" she asked calmly. Courtney smiled knowingly and replied, "She's just salty she couldn't show off. Her powers are disabled here and all." Supergirl's mood only darkened at Courtney's words. She shot a glare at Green Lantern and said coldly, "We should leave." Just then, the barbarian leader, who had just returned from issuing orders, overheard her. He quickly interjected, "Please, stay. If only for a little while. We want to thank you properly." Courtney's smile widened mischievously. "Let's stay a bit longer. The place is pretty interesting, right, Ace?" Ace looked around the primitive yet magical surroundings, the forests, the hidden cities built into mountains. After a moment, she shrugged. "Fine. I can stay. Makes no difference." Green Lantern, however, crossed his arms and said firmly, "We need to talk about that kryptonite rock before we leave. That thing can't stay here." The group naturally split after that. Ace, Courtney, and Pat headed back inside the fortress to chat and relax, while Green Lantern followed the barbarian leader to discuss the dangerous glowing rock. Supergirl remained standing alone, simmering with barely contained anger. After a few moments, she turned and stormed off, disappearing toward a nearby stone wall overlooking the sprawling forests. Amazo, who had been following Ace at first, noticed. His synthetic mind debated the situation for a moment before he spoke up to Ace, "I will scan the Earth's core while we are staying here." Ace nodded absently, waving him off as she continued inside with Courtney and Pat. Meanwhile, Supergirl sat on the wall, arms wrapped around her knees, gazing down at the endless greenery below. When she heard footsteps approaching, she turned slightly, only to look away immediately in distaste when she saw it was Amazo. Without a preamble, Amazo asked, "Why are you hostile toward me and Ace? I don't believe we have had any confrontation since my return to Earth." Supergirl clenched her jaw. "You are asking after what she has done," she replied. "Ace just knocked them out and no one is harmed permanently, and you have been hostile toward us even before that," Amazo added. "Why do you care?" Supergirl snapped at him. Amazo spoke thoughtfully. "My father always said to make friends where you can. Having an enemy for an unknown reason violates that directive." Supergirl's shoulders tensed. She turned, fury blazing in her blue eyes. "Did Ashbourne also tell you," she spat, "to clone someone and treat the clone better than the original?" Amazo observed her quietly, his eyes analyzing her emotions, before speaking calmly. "You are angry because father had a hand in T's creation? He helped, yes. But according to the information I was given, it was a logical decision. He did not betray you." He was unaware of exactly what Cadmus was working on. Though there is a moral ambiguity considering he expected the outcome. Supergirl's hands tightened into fists. Her whole body trembled with anger. "I forgave him for that when I first knew about it," she said, her voice shaking. "But he knew how hurt and angry I was about having a clone, and he still went on and invited her into his home. Even if he wanted a mother for you, he had to pick my own clone and say it in my face." Amazo tilted his head again, clearly confused by her assumption. "There is a misunderstanding you have," he said plainly. "T is not taken in as our mother, nor as a sibling for that matter." Supergirl narrowed her eyes at Amazo, her voice dripping with disbelief. "Oh right," she said sarcastically. "And what is she then?" "Your nanny." Amazo answered without hesitation. "She was our chauffeur. Her job was to take us to school in the morning, bring us back afterward, and drive us on outings and shopping days." Supergirl scoffed loudly, crossing her arms tightly over her chest. "As if I would believe that," she snapped. "She's living with you, isn't she?" Amazo nodded without any sign of shame or discomfort. "Her identity is sensitive. She had nowhere else to go. It was also more convenient to keep her around. Father had a hand in her creation, and the choice to walk away from Cadmus' orders, regardless of the circumstances, he held a direct responsibility for her and chose to help." Supergirl hesitated, confusion flashing across her face for the first time as she recalled her clone words. She has never forgotten the Watchtower fight. She didn't expect such a straightforward answer. Amazo, seeing her reaction, continued, "Father was right. He suspected you stopped dropping by and cut all ties because you hated that your clone was being helped by him." Supergirl felt like the ground under her shifted. Her lips parted slightly, stunned. "You're telling me," she said slowly, "the reason the clone didn't kill me was because of Ashbourne?" Amazo nodded. "I don't know the exact details, but yes. He convinced her to walk away from killing you, and from destroying the Watchtower." Supergirl blinked rapidly, her mind racing, and, she asked, "The two of them, they had no relation or intention besides Ashbourne giving her a place to stay and a job?" Again, Amazo nodded without hesitation. He paused for a moment before adding, to keep things clear, "Father and T had no relation beyond that. He only wanted to help. He bore no malice toward you at all. And I assure you, T is her own person now." Supergirl barely had time to process that when Amazo continued, "But over time, she changed. And even 2 months ago, she and Father grew closer and went on a date together. You don't need to worry about her coming after you or trying to take your place with that." Amazo turned around and left, believing he had clarified the misunderstanding and set things straight. Supergirl remained seated on the wall, staring at the forest without seeing it. A sensation like ice water poured over her head, chilling her to the bone as realization dawned. Galatea lied to her. The clone had lied back then, manipulated her, twisted the truth, and she wasn't clear enough with Ashbourne to fix the mess before it grew. For a brief second, guilt prickled her chest, but it was washed away almost instantly by something much stronger. Fury. A deep, burning fury erupted from within her, hotter and more consuming than anything she had ever felt before. Galatea had lied. Galatea had taken her place. Galatea had wormed her way into the life Supergirl thought she lost. Everything that had gone wrong, the broken bond, the loneliness, the silent resentment, all of it now had a face. Supergirl stood up slowly, her fists clenched so tightly her knuckles turned white. There was only one thought ringing in her head now, clear and loud: Galatea will pay. 2 hours later, after much discussion and consideration, the group made their decision. The giant kryptonite rock would remain hidden deep within the mountain. It was agreed that this was the only place where it could actually do good, safely tucked away from the wrong hands. However, to prevent any future threats, the entrance leading toward the Earth's core would be sealed off permanently. With that settled, the group prepared to leave. Amazo, ever helpful, offered, "I can teleport those heading to Metropolis." Courtney and her stepfather, Pat, immediately agreed, welcoming the quick trip home. Green Lantern and Supergirl, however, politely or in Supergirl's case, tensely declined, choosing instead to take their own way back. Thus, the group was divided. Amazo gathered those who agreed, and with a brief shimmer of golden light, teleported them all straight back into the heart of Metropolis. As they landed safely, Pat let out a low whistle. Thanks for the quick ride, Amazo. Sure beats driving. Amazo nodded with a polite smile, hands behind his back in his usual calm stance. Courtney stretched her arms above her head, then leaned closer to Ace, whispering with a mischievous glint, "Hey, did you notice Supergirl's face before we left? I've never seen her look like that. It was like she wanted to kill someone." Ace, standing lazily against, nodded casually. "Yeah, maybe she got that mad just from us staying a little longer," she said, shrugging. "Could be we just annoyed her." Neither seemed particularly concerned about it. Meanwhile, Amazo remained silent. He hadn't commented during their conversation, but deep down he knew better. He had a strong suspicion that it wasn't just their extended stay that had triggered Supergirl's rage. He figured it had something to do with the conversation they shared earlier, about tea, about their father, about truths that maybe weren't so easy to digest. Something he said must have infuriated her beyond measure. Still, Amazo made no outward sign of it. Instead, he calmly decided he would bring it up with his father later. After all, in his own words, he was just an underaged super android. He tried to help, and it seems it backfired. Handling messy emotional conflicts isn't his strong suit. In retrospect, that sounded like a job for someone far more experienced in the first place, his father. Ashbourne sat comfortably in his usual spot at his favorite cafe, leisurely sipping a cup of coffee. The streets buzzed with excitement as a lively caravan celebrating Superman's latest achievements paraded past him. It was a colorful and almost chaotic scene, performers twirling, music blaring, and police officers struggling to manage an enormous Superman balloon floating high above the crowd. What caught Ashbourne's eye, however, was the cart at the very end of the parade. There, standing atop a decorated float, were Stargirl, Vigilante, Shining Knight, and Green Arrow, all awkwardly waving to the sea of cheering citizens. Ashbourne raised a brow at the sight. Superman unavailable, so they send these five instead? It looked more like a last-minute school play than a grand tribute to the Man of Steel. As if on cue, a small child sitting near him loudly complained, "They're not even bringing the good ones." Ashbourne chuckled quietly into his cup. Smart kid. Even from his distance away, Ashbourne could feel the burning embarrassment radiating off Courtney. Her awkward, stiff movement said it all. She hated every second of this parade. The others weren't much better. Vigilante barely waved his hand. Green Arrow looked like he wanted to be anywhere else, and even the proud Shining Knight's posture sagged under the indignity of it all. Suddenly, a deafening impact echoed across the city square. A monstrous growl followed, low, guttural, angry. All eyes turned upward. Something was falling from the sky, hurtling straight toward the parade. With an explosive crash, a hulking brute, a monstrous, deformed creature, like a cheap knockoff of the Hulk, smashed straight into the Superman balloon, shredding it instantly. Bits of red and blue latex rained down as the monster plummeted further, colliding brutally with the hero's cart, sending it splintering in all directions. Chaos erupted. Police officers scrambled to protect civilians, drawing their weapons and firing without hesitation. The heroes leapt into action, but it was clear this was no ordinary thug. The monster stood its ground arrogantly, bullets bouncing harmlessly off its thick hide. It grinned savagely, raising its voice for all to hear. "Tell Superman to come out. General Wade Eiling wants a word." Ashbourne leaned back slightly in his seat, watching as the familiar names fought with all their might. One by one, they fell. STRIPE's mecha armor was torn apart with monstrous strength, leaving Pat unconscious in the wreckage. Vigilante tried a brave attack but was crushed beneath a collapsing wall. Shining Knight charged valiantly only to be pounded into a car, his ancient armor crumpling like paper. Speedy and Crimson Avenger arrived in a flash of teleportation, only to be swatted aside almost immediately, joining the growing pile of defeated heroes. Even Green Arrow, despite his skill, lasted mere moments before being thrown through a street vendor's stand. At last, only Courtney remained standing. Wielding her staff with fierce determination, she tried to drag the monster away from the heart of the city, away from the terrified civilians. Her efforts were brave, her willpower admirable. But alone, it wasn't enough. The monster roared, yanked her out of the sky with brute force, and hurled her mercilessly into the ground. The street cracked under the impact. Had it not been for her cosmic staff cushioning the blow, she would have been dead on impact. Ashbourne sighed and slowly rose from his seat, adjusting the cuffs of his black suit. He hadn't wanted to interfere. The place was full of people, and in a world filled with cameras and nosy reporters, summoning shadows was far from ideal in public. Still, he couldn't just stand by and let his daughter's friend die. Walking with a calm, steady pace, Ashbourne approached the rubble where Courtney lay struggling to move. He wore a sharp black suit with a white shirt underneath, simple, elegant, and unassuming. The monster, meanwhile, had dropped from the ruined float, stomping heavily toward Courtney, ready to deliver the final blow. Ashbourne's voice rang out clear and calm over the battlefield. "General Eiling," he called smoothly with a smile, "fancy seeing you here. Your new look certainly left quite the impression on everyone, but I sincerely advise you to stick to the old ones. It was more elegant, to say the least." The monster, once General Wade Eiling, turned slowly toward the newcomer, confusion briefly flickering across his mutated features. The hulking monster turned its mutated head toward the calm figure standing before him. Recognition flashed in his bloodshot eyes. "Ashbourne Black," the monster rumbled, his voice low and gritty, "I didn't expect to see you here. Didn't take you for one to enjoy this kind of parade." Ashbourne smiled lightly. "I don't," he replied, "I was simply enjoying a cup of coffee in a nearby establishment when your little show decided to crash through my morning." The general gave a rumbling chuckle that shook the ground beneath them. "I'm here to deliver a message," he said. "That the Justice League are not the only superpowered individuals on the block anymore." Ashbourne gave a slight nod, his posture relaxed as if they were two businessmen discussing weather. "I see your patriotic spirit is as strong as ever," General Ashbourne said with a chuckle, "but I'm afraid you selected the wrong target, and at the worst possible time." The monster's face hardened. His white and black eyes narrowed, studying Ashbourne with growing annoyance. Ashbourne, undeterred, gestured casually toward the scattered and unconscious heroes. "These are not the decision-makers of the Justice League," he said calmly. Then he swept his hand toward the edges of the square where terrified civilians cowered behind overturned food stands and broken parade floats. "And this place? It's filled with civilians. All you're doing is endangering innocents without achieving any meaningful results. I'd suggest you stand down. Superman will come to you, eventually, once he gets back from wherever he wandered off to." The monster grunted. "You got it wrong," he growled. "This isn't just about targeting the big guns. It's about sending a message. By cracking a few of them, they'll know I mean business." Ashbourne met his words with a quiet patience, never letting the faint smile fade from his lips. "I assure you," Ashbourne said, "they've already received your message loud and clear. No need to escalate further." With measured steps, Ashbourne began walking toward the general. He moved slowly but deliberately, passing by Stargirl, who had finally managed to sit up. Courtney clutched her cosmic staff tightly, using it as a crutch. She watched Ashbourne's approach with wide, confused eyes. There was a quiet hope flickering inside her. She wasn't strong enough to stand yet, and part of her desperately wished Ashbourne could somehow end this without further violence like he did before. Ashbourne gave her a brief glance, a silent reassurance passing between them. Then he continued forward. The monster leaned down slightly, towering over Ashbourne, his face mere inches away. The beast's frustration grew the longer he stared into Ashbourne's smiling, unbothered face. Ashbourne didn't fear him. Ashbourne didn't respect his power. "I entertained you long enough because of how much you helped Cadmus over the years," the general growled, his breath hot and rancid. "But if you stand in my way, I will crush you." Ashbourne let out a soft sigh, shaking his head almost pityingly. Still smiling, he said, "No can do." His voice carried the same infuriating calmness, as if this was all just a minor inconvenience. "I can't have you hurt Stargirl. I won't hear the end of it if something happened to her while I stood by. I ask you to step away and wait for Superman. I don't want to get dragged into a violent conflict if it can be helped." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then the monster threw his head back and laughed. A deep, ugly sound that rolled through the ruined parade like a thunderclap. "I've never heard someone so arrogant," he barked between laughs, "as if you can do anything." Ashbourne's smile didn't falter. From the inside pocket of his jacket, he pulled out a small, gleaming blue dagger. It caught the sunlight sharply as he twirled it once in his fingers as he spoke, his voice still carrying that frustrating calmness. "If you take one more step toward the girl," he said, his blue dagger glinting in the sunlight, "I'll have to give you a bad time." "Do you want to have a bad time, General?" The monster grinned, an ugly and malicious expression twisting his already deformed face. Without hesitation, he stomped one heavy step forward. Ashbourne sighed again, his eyes lazily drifting up toward the clear blue sky. "It is a nice day," he said softly, as if lamenting the situation. "Birds are singing, flowers are blooming." His eyes returned to the monster, hardening into something deadly. "On days like these, men like you," Ashbourne's voice dropped into a razor-sharp whisper, "should be burning in hell." In one smooth, effortless motion, Ashbourne slashed with the blue dagger. A deep gashing wound tore across the monster's broad chest. The beast roared in agony, instinctively swinging a massive fist at Ashbourne with all the strength it could muster. Ashbourne simply stepped to the side, graceful and quick. As he moved, he slashed again, carving a deep wound along the monster's outstretched arm. The monster, bellowing in rage, tried to dash forward, but Ashbourne smoothly rotated around him, delivering a brutal slash to the back of the monster's knee. The giant collapsed heavily to the ground, snarling and growling. Ashbourne didn't press the attack. Instead, he casually began taking off the jacket of his suit. The monster, struggling to its feet, turned to face Ashbourne again, pure fury burning in its eyes. With a roar, the beast charged. Ashbourne met it with maddening calm. As the monster rushed in, he threw his jacket covering the monster's face and blinding him. In that instant, Ashbourne moved like a whirlwind. Slash after slash tore across the monster's body, blood splattering the ground as the creature swung blindly, missing every blow. Soon, the monster staggered and fell again, its body riddled with deep, bleeding wounds. Ashbourne stood victorious, breathing evenly as he turned away from the fallen form and walked toward the stunned Stargirl. She sat there still leaning heavily on her staff, watching him with wide, amazed eyes. Ashbourne smiled warmly as he approached. "Ace would glare at me for the rest of her life if you got hurt on my watch," he said with a chuckle. Stargirl let out a weak laugh, trying to stand up straighter. "I knew you were good," she said, wincing slightly from her injuries. "You gave Batman the beating of his life after all, but I didn't expect you could take on that thing." Ashbourne rotated the blue dagger easily in his hand, the blade still shining with a faint magical glow. "Magical dagger," he said casually, "good for cutting tough things." Stargirl smiled gratefully and, with effort, got to her feet, wobbling slightly. "Thanks. I'll drag that damn thing away from here," she said, determination flashing in her eyes. Ashbourne raised an eyebrow. "You're still weak. You should recover a little first," he advised. But before either could act further, a deep, guttural growl drew their attention. The monster was standing. Ashbourne's eyes narrowed sharply as he noticed the deep wounds slowly knitting themselves back together. Regeneration. Stargirl stared, stunned, as the monster's eyes began to glow a blinding white. It roared louder than before, the very ground trembling from the sound, and then, without warning, charged not at Ashbourne, but straight at Stargirl. Stargirl froze in place, her body still too weak to react. Ashbourne moved instantly. He shoved Stargirl out of the way and raised his left arm, activating the arm guard in a flash of light. The monster's punch collided with Ashbourne's guarded arm. The guard pulsed brightly, absorbing most of the impact, but the force was colossal. A massive shockwave erupted, cracking the street, flipping cars, and sending Stargirl flying away like a ragdoll. Ashbourne himself was hurled backward with bone-breaking force, crashing through the glass doors of a nearby building with a thunderous crash. Meanwhile, the monster staggered back a few steps, momentarily dazed. Inside the building, Ashbourne stood up quickly. He quickly scanned his surroundings. It was a deserted venue hall, no civilians, no cameras. The monster charged after him, fists raised for another brutal assault. Ashbourne smiled as he extended his hand, blocking the blow with ease. The entire floor cracked beneath their feet, the impact shattering the tiles and sending dust billowing up around them. The monster's eyes widened with confusion and shock as Ashbourne's smile turned predatory. His eyes glowed with sinister purple light. In the next instant, Ashbourne slashed faster than the eye could follow. The monster's head dropped from its body, landing with a sickening thud a few feet away. Outside, Courtney struggled to her feet, her body trembling. She looked toward the building with horror. Ashbourne had pushed her aside, only to be thrown into the building by that monstrous force. Then the building shook violently. Dust and debris spilled from the shattered entrance. Fear clenched in her chest. Had Ashbourne? But then, through the haze of dust, a familiar figure emerged. Ashbourne walked calmly out of the building, his clothes torn and his left sleeve shredded. He dusted himself off casually, looking almost annoyed. "Gizmo is going to kill me," he said loud enough for her and anyone still listening to hear, staring mournfully at his destroyed arm guard. Stargirl hurried toward him, a relieved expression on her face. "You're okay," she called out. Ashbourne glanced at her with a half-smile and said dryly, "Which part of me looks okay to you? Gizmo's toy is destroyed. I was worried Ace would glare at me for your death. Now I need to worry about an overly enthusiastic employee avenging his toy." Stargirl's eye twitched in irritation. "I'm being serious." "And I'm being serious too," Ashbourne replied without missing a beat. "Imagine a combination of Batman and Lex Luthor. That's Gizmo." He said it so casually that Stargirl almost forgot how much pain she was supposed to feel right now. "Putting aside the stupid toy," Stargirl insisted, her voice firmer, "are you okay? It hit you hard." Ashbourne shrugged. The arm guard took most of the damage, but that thing was really strong. Managed to destroy it. That's a new achievement. Stargirl hesitated before asking, "What happened to it?" "Dead," Ashbourne replied simply. "I cut his head." Stargirl swallowed hard, her stomach tightening at how casually he spoke of it. Ashbourne's gaze shifted toward the recovering heroes, Green Arrow groaning as he stood up, Crimson Avenger leaning heavily against a broken wall, Stripe attempting to pull the remnants of his armor together. Ashbourne sighed and tucked the broken remains of the arm guard into his pocket. "Well, I've had enough action for one day. I need to figure out how to calm Gizmo down before he stages a tech-based coup in my house. CYA around, and don't get yourself killed." Without waiting for a response, he strolled off, ignoring the dust and the scattered debris around him. Stargirl watched him go, a chuckle slipping from her lips despite herself. If he hadn't stepped in, they would have all been dead. With renewed strength, she walked toward her injured friends and smiled weakly. "It's over," she said. But as she reached them, her smile faltered. The sound of muttering civilians met her ears. The whispers weren't about relief or gratitude. They were sharp, cutting. They couldn't even stop that thing. Just fillers, not real heroes. A random guy with a knife did better than all of them together. The words stabbed deeper than any wound. Stargirl stiffened, feeling the weight of their judgment. Their failure wasn't just written in bruises and rubble, it was being etched into the hearts of the very people they had sworn to protect. Her mood dropped immediately, her staff feeling heavier than ever. Later that evening, Ashbourne sat in the R&D lab, slouched comfortably in a chair as Gizmo paced furiously in front of him, waving what looked like blueprints and broken metal fragments. "You're lucky to even be alive." Gizmo snapped for what felt like the 10th time. "Do you have any idea how hard it is to create an arm guard that can withstand that level of impact? And you." He jabbed a finger toward Ashbourne, "You just let it get destroyed." Ashbourne said nothing, simply nodding occasionally as the small genius ranted on. He didn't object, didn't argue. He could see the passion burning behind every furious word Gizmo threw at him. "This guy cares too much," Ashbourne mused internally, hiding a tired but amused smile. As Gizmo continued his tirade, moving into the technical difficulties of reconstructing the arm guard and how Ashbourne's reckless behavior would require weeks of work to fix, Ashbourne thought idly to himself, fighting that monster was easier than enduring this lecture. He almost chuckled, but quickly swallowed it back, realizing that if he so much as smiled, the lecture would only get longer and louder. So he sat there, quietly suffering, while Gizmo's voice echoed through the lab late into the night. For the past 2 years, under the cold, watchful eye of Amanda Waller, Cadmus had been quietly preparing. Ever since Lex Luthor's kidnapping and the unsettling appearances of the so-called shadow monsters, priorities shifted. The Justice League, threats from rogue metahumans and aliens, all of it faded into the background compared to the new, ominous menace. If there was one thing Waller understood, it was survival. And survival demanded new weapons. Light-based weapons. Top scientists and engineers were gathered under Cadmus' strictest security. Their conclusion was simple. The shadow monsters were creatures of darkness, born of the night, thriving within shadows. They had appeared exactly 3 times, each time under the cover of darkness, and they moved through shadows as if it were their second skin. Based on that pattern, Cadmus devised a bold countermeasure: energy proton handguns, firing concentrated laser beams mimicking the rays of the sun, destructive and hopefully deadly to any creature born of darkness. The first prototypes were successful. Waller didn't wait for perfection. She ordered mass production. Behind layers of secrecy, Amanda Waller contacted Bruce Wayne, asking for a discreet meeting at the Watchtower. She claimed to have information regarding the Shadow Monarch, the mysterious entity linked to the monsters. Batman, cautious but equally concerned, agreed. When Amanda Waller set foot in the Watchtower conference room, tension filled the air. Memories of her past actions of kidnapping the Question, cloning experiments, and nearly causing the Watchtower's destruction were not easily forgotten. But the Justice League, recognizing the gravity of the threat, allowed her the courtesy of speaking. Amanda stood at the center of the room, her hands folded calmly in front of her. "Since the incident with Luthor," she began, "we've been preparing. We developed weapons capable of combating the shadow monsters. They're now being produced in bulk. I propose an alliance." She glanced around the room. "We may not like each other, but there's a bigger threat lurking." Wonder Woman crossed her arms, her voice sharp. "You think we'll trust you after everything you've done?" Amanda didn't flinch. "I don't trust you either. You have good intentions now, sure. But that can change. What matters is that today, I'm willing to bet on your intentions rather than ignore the monsters hiding out there." Superman leaned forward slightly. "Have you found anything about them?" Amanda shook her head, her expression grave. "Every agency we have has been looking, but nothing. They've appeared exactly 3 times, no more, no less. Outside those events, no sightings, no information. It's like they don't exist. Cadmus will share with you our research of the weapons and how to combat them, and in return you share with us any information you know about these monsters." Batman, silent until now, narrowed his eyes. "We have a theory," he said grimly. "We believe Ashbourne is a lackey working for the Shadow Monarch." Batman went on to explain in detail. Amanda blinked, surprised for the briefest moment, before her face returned to its stone-cold mask. She had always respected Ashbourne in her own way. He had helped when needed and avoided questionable ambitions, unlike Luthor. Still, Batman's words unsettled her. Slowly, Amanda lowered her head and spoke. "When Ashbourne took Ace under his protection, some generals and high-ranking officials demanded we retrieve her by force. I informed Ashbourne, warning him that keeping her was impossible." She paused. "But less than an hour later, those same officials called me back, terrified. They ordered me to assist Ashbourne at all costs." She frowned. "I still don't know what changed that day." Batman nodded sharply. "Another piece of evidence. He's connected and likely a lackey of the Shadow Monarch." Before more could be said, the conference room doors slid open. Heads turned sharply. Supergirl stepped inside. "You shouldn't be here," Superman said, frowning. Supergirl didn't flinch. "There's something else you don't know," she said firmly. "After my clone escaped Cadmus, she went to Ashbourne for help. He gave her a job. She's been living with him ever since." The room went still. Superman's eyes widened, shock crossing his face. Other League members whispered among themselves, their expressions a mix of surprise and concern. Amanda's eyes narrowed dangerously, fury simmering within her. She had spent countless resources hunting Galatea, and the clone had been hiding right under their noses with Ashbourne. Ashbourne, who now felt more and more like a second Lex Luthor in Amanda's mind. Superman, gathering himself, asked, "Why didn't you tell us earlier?" Supergirl hesitated, her hands curling into fists. "It was the price to heal you," she said softly. The words hit Superman like a physical blow. He opened his mouth to respond but found no words. Supergirl continued, her voice colder now. If Ashbourne is working for the one who hurt you, then our agreement is null. Without another glance at the stunned heroes, she turned and left the room, her cape flowing behind her. Silence hung over the conference room. Only now did the heroes realize the cause of Supergirl's change. She must have been hurt by Ashbourne's actions. He gave protection and shelter to her clone at the price of her cousin's health. All of them knew Supergirl liked him, and his action must have cut too deep. While tension boiled over in the Watchtower conference room, in a far quieter and far more intimate corner of the world, Ashbourne and Galatea were lost in each other. They lay naked under the soft covers of a large bed. Ashbourne trailed slow, deliberate kisses along T's neck, savoring the quiet moment between them. T's hands ran over his back, her breath hitching slightly in pleasure. But just as she was melting into his touch, Ashbourne paused, his lips brushing her skin as he murmured, "Your lie has finally caught up with you." Galatea stilled, confused, blinking at him. "What happened?" she asked, frowning. Ashbourne chuckled low in his chest, pulling back slightly to look into her confused eyes. "Kara," he said with clear amusement, spilled the beans. "Everyone knows about you now, including Amanda Waller. And Kara still thinks I traded the potion with her to keep you a secret," it groaned loudly, throwing her head back against the pillow in annoyance. "Ugh, seriously?" She rubbed her temples before muttering, "I knew you are bad at raising children. Amazo had to go and spill the beans because of your weird-ass teachings. Now what?" Ashbourne shrugged casually. "We wait and see what they'll do," he replied smoothly. Galatea pouted and asked annoyed, "Can't you just beat them all and be done with it?" Ashbourne chuckled again, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I'd like to avoid violence if possible, or at least not to be the one to raise his fist first," he said, his voice warm but firm. T rolled her eyes dramatically. "Boring," she said, before leaning in, grabbing his face in her hands and pulling him into a deep, fierce kiss. If they were going to be hunted tomorrow or the day after, she was damn well going to enjoy today. And for a little while longer, the world and its problems could wait. Days had passed since the storm at the Watchtower, and inside Ashbourne's living room, a different kind of meeting was taking place. Ashbourne sat casually on the couch, a cup of coffee in hand, while Ace lounged in an armchair, Amazo leaned against the wall, and T stretched lazily on the other couch. Ashbourne cleared his throat to gather their attention. "All right, listen up," he began. "Today, I'll be heading over to Mount Justice. I will be invited by our friends, the tribal heroes up in space, and our old pals from Cadmus. Their paranoia and ego grew large enough that they started hunting for the Shadow Soldiers. They even went as far as hiding their families and friends as if this is their last stand. Well, I will be out of communication for a while." Amazo's eyes flickered. "Should I tag along?" he asked. Ashbourne waved his hand dismissively. "No, it could agitate them. They are like a scaredy cat with attitude issues. I'll try to be nice about this, have a little chat, and hopefully they are not too afraid to rethink their ways and let me go peacefully." His tone was light. The three could hear the amusement in his voice. Ace piped up, "I thought they would know better than to pull something silly with you again. Anyway, if you're gonna kill them, remember not to hurt Courtney." Ashbourne clutched at his chest, faking a look of deep, exaggerated pain. "Your old man is about to be kidnapped by a bunch of violence-addicted heroes and crazed government agents, and you have no shred of fear for my safety," he wailed. "Ah, years of sacrifice to raise you, all in vain." Ace stuck out her tongue at him without a shred of sympathy. T chuckled and asked, "No one's coming our way, right?" Ashbourne shook his head, grinning. "You're too scary and dangerous for them. So they're going to play it safe and kidnap the weak, vulnerable human with magic stuff. They can extract information from the poor guy." At least, T laughed, a low and amused sound. "Big mistake." Ashbourne stood up, straightening his jacket. "Oh, and don't forget to let Uncle Rex know I'm on a trip to France," he added with a wink. Buying bread, Ace giggled. "Poor Grandpa Rex, always left in the dark." Amazo smirked. "His heart is too weak for the full truth. It's for his own good." With one last amused glance at his family, Ashbourne headed toward the door, the rising sun casting long shadows along the floor. He was on his way to Shadow Corp first, and from there, to whatever the heroes had in store for him. The morning sun cast long shadows across the road as Ashbourne drove toward Shadow Corp, his fingers tapping idly against the steering wheel. The radio played a soft jazz tune, the kind that made the drive feel almost leisurely, until four figures descended from the sky, landing heavily on the asphalt before his car. Ashbourne hit the brakes, the tires screeching softly as the car came to a stop. Through the windshield, he observed the imposing forms of Superman, Wonder Woman, Martian Manhunter, and Shazam, their expressions stern and serious, their postures rigid and tall. Ashbourne rolled down the window and leaned out slightly. "Good morning," he said pleasantly. "Standing on the road like that is dangerous, you know." Superman stepped forward, his eyes hard. "We need you to come with us." Ashbourne tilted his head, his smile never wavering. "Is the following optional?" No one answered. Wonder Woman's eyes narrowed. Ashbourne chuckled. "I guess not." "Well, wait till I park the car. We wouldn't want to endanger civilians, after all." Superman's eye twitched. Without another word, he strode forward, gripped the car's frame, and lifted it effortlessly, carrying both the vehicle and Ashbourne to the side of the road. Ashbourne stepped out. "You know," he mused, "if you ever decide to quit heroics, let me know. You have a great future in parking." Superman opened his mouth then closed it, momentarily thrown off. Wonder Woman cut in sharply. "Enough with the stupid talk." She tapped her communicator. "Open the boom tube." A swirling vortex of energy erupted beside them, its light casting eerie reflections across the asphalt. Superman turned to order Ashbourne inside only to find him already walking through, hands in his pockets, as if this were just another casual stroll. The heroes exchanged glances. The start didn't go as they had expected, no resistance or objection. Ashbourne went with the flow. As always, he was unpredictable to them. On the other side, Ashbourne found himself in a vast hall within Mount Justice. The space was packed, the entire Justice League spread around, their expressions ranging from suspicion to outright hostility. Even other heroes lingered at the edges, such as the Teen Titans, watching warily. But what truly caught his attention were the Cadmus soldiers, their new light-based weapons gleaming in their grip. And at the center of it all, Amanda Waller, her arms crossed, her gaze colder than ice. Green Lantern stepped forward. "Hand over any weapons you're carrying." Ashbourne shrugged. Without protest, he removed both arm guards, the blue dagger, and a small firearm, placing them in Lantern's outstretched hand. Then, he was led to the center of the hall. A hard-light prison erupted around him, its walls humming with energy. Ashbourne studied the barrier with mild amusement. "So, no one's going to explain anything?" He tapped the glowing wall. "And isn't this a bit excessive?" Amanda stepped forward. "This isn't for you," she said flatly. "It's for whoever might come to save you." Ashbourne's smile didn't falter. "And the first part?" Batman emerged from the shadows, his voice a low growl. "We know you have a connection to the Shadow Monarch." Ashbourne chuckled. "For a moment, I thought you wanted to put me on display, an example of an upstanding citizen, or something." Batman's glare deepened. "Stop the games. Tell us everything you know." Ashbourne tilted his head. "I've committed no crime. I'm not obligated to play along with your interrogation." His tone remained light, almost conversational. "If anything, I humored you and followed peacefully only to get this treatment. I can sue you for this." Amanda Waller stepped forward, her voice sharp. "You stole and hid Cadmus's property, Galatea, knowing full well her nature." Ashbourne didn't even blink. "Amanda, you hurt my feelings. What is a clone in front of our collaboration? But if you insist on this, you can speak to your superiors, or sue me." Batman's growl cut through the tension. "We know you're blackmailing or threatening them somehow." Ashbourne's smile remained. "That's a grave accusation. You'll need to prove it, or that's another lawsuit heading your way." Superman stepped forward, his tone firm but measured. "Ashbourne, there's no need to make this harder than it needs to be. Just tell us what you know." Ashbourne tilted his head. "You're bypassing due process because you know I haven't committed any crimes. You have no right to interrogate me. In fact, You turned yourselves into kidnappers. Batman's glare deepened. You're hiding information about a dangerous criminal. That's enough of a reason. Ashbourne chuckled. Criminal? Enlighten me, Bruce. What crimes are you referring to, exactly? He spread his hands. Last I checked, Doomsday and the Thanagarians were stopped by this so-called criminal. No. Batman stiffened at the casual use of his name. Batman recovered quickly. He kidnapped Lex Luthor. Ashbourne laughed. And you kidnapped me. What's the difference? Wonder Woman moved closer, her voice icy. We are nothing alike. Ashbourne rolled his eyes. You stay out of it. You have no right to speak here. Your entire island should be purged. His tone was eerily calm. It is filled with disgusting, bloodthirsty women, good for nothing but killing, stealing, and raping. Wonder Woman's jaw clenched, her eyes burning with fury. She took a step forward only for the Flash to zip in, gripping her arm. Ashbourne smirked. You gathered everyone here, afraid someone would come for me? Breaking news, no one is coming. Superman tried again, his patience thinning. Just share what you know. There's no need to complicate things. Ashbourne chuckled. I told you, I like to make friends when I can. That's something you need to learn. His gaze swept over the League. I am just enjoying my life without any world domination plan or villainy, yet you are making an enemy out of me for nothing but suspicion and paranoia. Ashbourne's voice turned mocking as he gestured around the room. Look at you all, passing judgment, kidnapping someone, imprisoning him in secret. What's next? Public executions? Now that's the start of injustice. Think Superman, think. Superman's fists tightened. Those shadow monsters killed without hesitation. They're dangerous. Ashbourne rolled his eyes again. He pointed at Wonder Woman. She's killed people. If you let her, she will try to kill me then at the Green Lanterns. They've killed people. Finally, at Batman. Even you have killed before. So don't stand there acting like saints. Silence. The heroes exchanged uneasy glances. Ashbourne crossed his arms, his smile never fading. So tell me, who is the real villain? As Ashbourne faced off against the League's biggest names, the gathered heroes and Cadmus operatives watched with mixed reactions, curiosity, doubt, and outright hostility swirling through the hall. Near the back, Stargirl tugged at Stripe's arm, her voice low but urgent. This is wrong, she said. They're treating him like some criminal just because of a suspicion. Pat gave her a long look, his mechanical suit whirring softly as he turned. You've changed a lot. You used to hate his guts and his mere presence anger you. Courtney crossed her arms. He's annoying and can be an asshole, but he's not a bad person. And he's a decent father. Pat sighed, glancing at the tense standoff. The others aren't unreasonable. If he just shares what he knows or confirms he doesn't, this'll be over. He shook his head. Hopefully, he doesn't make it harder for himself. Courtney nodded, but her grip on her staff tightened. Nearby, the Teen Titans observed the scene with varying degrees of discomfort. Jinx crossed her arms, her usual smirk absent. This is ridiculous. Bringing someone and putting him through this? It is wrong. It is no different from kidnapping. Beast Boy nodded vigorously. Dude is a weirdo, sure, but he's never done anything real evil. Just 'cause his company's name sounds shady doesn't mean he's guilty. Nightwing, arms crossed, kept his eyes locked on Ashbourne. There are multiple suspicious points about him, he admitted. But if he just clarifies himself, nothing will go wrong and he will leave just fine. Beside them, Raven stood unnaturally still. Her face was paler than usual, her fingers trembling slightly at her sides. That Mun in the cell was the greatest monster she had ever known. Far greater even than her father. And the scariest part? No one else realized it. She didn't think for a second that the gathered heroes could stop him if he decided to kill them all. Worse, she couldn't warn them. Not without exposing him to everyone. For now, he was still playing human at least. But if that changed... She didn't dare to imagine it. Starfire leaned closer, her eyes full of concern. "Friend Raven, are you okay?" Raven swallowed hard. "Yes. Just a little tired." Starfire frowned but didn't press further. Raven's hands clenched into fists and glanced at her shadow as she thought. They had no idea what they were dealing with. Supergirl stood alone watching and listening to every word. She was full of frustration. She spilled the truth and told them about Galatea, hoping they will help her go after the clone, but instead everyone agreed and united to target Ashbourne instead. Supergirl didn't want to put Ashbourne through this or make things worse with him. She just wanted to make Galatea pay for her lies, but now she knew she made things worse. She felt like slapping herself for her stupidity. Wonder Woman had finally had enough. "This is going nowhere," she snapped, removing the lasso of truth from her hip. "I will make him talk." The barrier between her and Ashbourne dissolved. Without hesitation, she whipped the golden rope around him, its glow flaring to life as it tightened. Ashbourne didn't resist, standing perfectly still as Wonder Woman commanded, "Tell me everything you know about the Shadow Monarch." The lasso burned brighter, compelling to tell the truth. Ashbourne spoke. "The Shadow Monarch is Queen Hippolyta." Silence. Then. "She's using the shadows to gather males for her island's hip-dancing nights." His tone was dead serious. She was particularly pleased by Doomsday's tool. As for Lex Luthor? She kept him for her daughter. Apparently, she feared her granddaughter would be all muscles and no brain, like someone here. For a moment, the heroes were stunned, then realization struck. Ashbourne wasn't revealing anything. He was mocking Wonder Woman. Her entire body shook with rage, her sword flashing into her hand in an instant. "You!" Superman and Shazam barely intercepted her, their combined strength just enough to hold back the enraged Amazonian. Ashbourne laughed. "See? Her first thought is always killing. My point exactly." Martian Manhunter stepped into the cell. "You're intentionally provoking her." Ashbourne replied, "Just proving my point." "So, you are next? Are you going to read my memories without my consent?" John didn't hesitate. "You leave us no choice." Ashbourne shrugged. "I can't with a good conscience let you do that without a warning. You'll suffer if you do that. Might not even survive." John paused for a moment, then placed his hand on Ashbourne's forehead, ignoring the warning. The League watched closely. John's consciousness plunged into emptiness. A white void stretched endlessly around him. No thoughts. No memories. Just nothing. He tried to push deeper, to escape, but the endless white void held him. Then cracks, the white world shattered, pieces dissolving into jet-black darkness. A suffocating pressure crushed down on him. His body locked in place. And then, two massive purple eyes flared to life in the endless darkness, staring into his soul. Before he could do anything, purple fire erupted, consuming him. In the real world, the heroes watched as Martian Manhunter suddenly convulsed. His body began shriveling like burning paper. A blood-curdling scream tore from his throat. The Flash moved in a blur, yanking John away from Ashbourne. But it was too late. John twitched weakly in Flash's arms, his form charred, his breathing shallow. The Martian was burned in front of everyone and no one saw any fire. Horror gripped the room. Amanda Waller frowned at Ashbourne, who didn't stop smiling the whole time. Superman roared, "What did you do?" Ashbourne sighed. "I did nothing special. And I did warn him sincerely." His smile turned sharp. "But regretfully he did not listen. None of you did. You can't blame me for it. We will make you speak everything you know, even if we have to torture it out of you. You just picked the hard choice for yourself." Batman spoke coldly. But everyone could tell the anger in his voice. Ashbourne blinked, followed by snicker then a full laughter, the sound echoing through the hall. When he finally stopped, he wiped an imaginary tear from his eye and said, Sorry, it's just a good joke." Superman, standing stiffly nearby, spoke regretfully. "I wanted to get this done as peacefully as possible, but you are making it hard for everyone." Amanda Waller, not missing a beat, added coldly, "You keep smiling. Do you think you're safe?" Even if the Justice League refuses to cross the line, I will. Ashbourne's amused expression faded into something heavier. You know, I'm a good-natured person and really hard to anger, he said, his voice calm but low, but my patience and tolerance are beginning to run out with all of you. You brought me here and acted as if I'm doing something evil, when I did nothing. Even if everything you suspect is true, you still have no right to act against me according to your own rules. This is all about what you fear, what you don't understand or control. It has nothing to do with crimes or evil. His eyes scanned the faces surrounding his cell, sharp and discerning. I am not obliged to explain anything to you. The people around him didn't respond, merely keeping their stern gazes locked on him. Amanda broke the silence. Leave him to me. I'll make him spill everything he knows. Ashbourne let out a long, audible sigh. You asked if I think I'm safe here? He tilted his head slightly, his smile growing predatory as he shifted his gaze between Amanda and Batman. I am safe here. And no harm will come my way, not because you aren't willing to follow rules and laws, or because I'm relying on someone to come save me. It's really much simpler than that. His smile completely gone, all that left was a dangerous and cold look on his face. I told you years ago, he said, voice laced with menace, you are all far more fragile than you realize. Too easy to break. Years of battling monsters and villains had given the gathered heroes a keen sense of when true danger was near, and right now, a deep chill ran down every spine in the hall. Ashbourne's eyes shifted from their usual color to a burning, unnatural purple, as an aura of dread filled the air. At that moment, everyone understood, Ashbourne wasn't just another human being. Before anyone could react, before a hand could even twitch, Ashbourne lifted his arm. Purple light exploded from his hand in all directions, the aura consolidated into chains of pure energy wrapping around every person present, locking them in place. Not a single muscle could move. Even Superman couldn't budge or even move his mouth. Ashbourne's voice carried throughout the hall, I don't need anyone to come. Because I alone am plenty for the lot of you. And me being a peaceful law-abiding citizen was your greatest protection and shield, but you chose to let go of it. While they stood frozen, their wide, horrified eyes stared at him as if seeing him for the first time. Ashbourne slowly raised his hand again, and in a flash of violet energy, a short sword appeared, gleaming with malevolent light. He turned his gaze on Superman. So, what do you think I should do? Ashbourne asked coolly, since I'm a criminal and a lackey of an even bigger one? Tell me. Should I just kill everyone here? With a simple gesture, a curl of one finger, Superman's frozen body floated toward Ashbourne, helpless. I'll allow you to speak, Ashbourne said magnanimously. Superman, struggling to move even a little, finally managed to open his mouth. You had powers? Ashbourne's response was swift and merciless. Without hesitation, he drove the purple sword into Superman's chest. The Man of Steel screamed, the sound raw and desperate. I am the one asking now, Ashbourne said coldly, twisting the sword deeper into Superman's flesh. Gritting his teeth against the agony, Superman gasped out, if you cross the line, there's no going back. Ashbourne replied casually and unconcerned, you picked the fight. You made the choice to make it harder for everyone, he said, almost lazily, and I am merely playing on the ground you all chose. The line was completely erased by you. Now, you face the consequences of your choice. Without a hint of regret, Ashbourne pulled the sword free. Superman fell, crumpling like a rag doll, no longer able to even scream. Ashbourne walked forward, his steps unhurried, until he stood before Amanda Waller. You, he said, are the most disappointing one. You lost all of your resolve way too quickly. Amanda stared at him, unable to move or speak, terror filling her eyes. You actually joined the tribal heroes so quickly after all the help I gave you, and I know this is not about tea. You think of me as a second Lex at this point and you want to get rid of me. Ashbourne said. He shook his head. I don't even feel like hearing your excuses or explanation. I would have ended Cadmus and sent you to prison or something, but you are too stubborn and annoying. I know for a fact you will come after me again once your ego gets inflated again. Ashbourne smiled once more, a final farewell. You failed your purpose, Amanda, but knowing you was interesting nonetheless. Goodbye. With a single, swift motion, the purple sword sliced through Amanda's neck. Her head fell from her shoulders, lifeless. Ashbourne turned around to face the rest, His expression now filled with clear annoyance. "You had to go and bring everyone for this?" he said loudly, lamenting the situation. "Now I have to kill so many because of your stupidity. Your addiction to violence and love of picking fights are truly problematic." Ashbourne's eyes shifted, landing squarely on Stargirl and Stripe. With a casual flick of his hand, the binds that held them in place unraveled and disappeared away. At the same time, a swirling purple gate opened beside them, its energy humming ominously. "I gave you my word," Ashbourne said, his voice steady, "that if a day came when I decided to eradicate the Justice League, I would spare you and the ones close to you. I always keep my word." Stargirl and Stripe stood frozen, stunned by the sudden development. Stargirl gripped her staff tighter as she recalled the promise that day, her voice trembling with disbelief. "Wait, that was real? I thought it was a joke." Ashbourne shrugged nonchalantly. "It was both," he said. "You're Ace's friend. I won't harm you just because you hung with the wrong crowd. Just try to be more selective about the kind of folks you associate with. Not everyone as nice as me." Courtney stared at him, her mouth open in shock. "You can't be serious," she said. "You're the only wrong crowd in this place. You just killed someone." Ashbourne's face showed no remorse. "It was in self-defense. Even law is on my side. Being kidnapped, imprisoned and all," he said simply. "And why are you even talking back? You should have said yes, sir, and walked away." Pat Dugan, standing firmly behind Courtney, shook his head. "We can't just walk away. We can't leave everyone like this." Ashbourne sighed, as if their persistence genuinely bored him. "You know, there's no shame in walking away," he said. "These barbaric idiots dragged you into this situation. You're victims. Besides," he added, a small smirk appearing on his face, "even Amazo couldn't beat me. What could the two of you possibly do? Just go. You don't need to see what I'm about to do next. It's not going to be a pleasant sight." Ashbourne's words shook Pat and forced him to rethink his actions. In the end, Pat glanced at Courtney, his heart heavy with the decision he was about to make. Then, with sudden resolve, he grabbed her by the arm and flung her through the purple gate. "Close it!" Pat barked. Ashbourne obliged, and the portal snapped shut with a sound like a thunderclap. Pat turned back, raising his arms, preparing to fight, only to be immediately frozen again by another simple wave of Ashbourne's hand. Ashbourne looked at him with a calm expression. "Since you insist, I'll allow you to be a witness to this," he said. "And I will still spare you on behalf of your daughter." Pat could only glare helplessly as Ashbourne's gaze turned next toward Wonder Woman. "You," Ashbourne said, "daughter and princess of the Rapist's Island, how does it feel to be like this? Just like how your island loves their sperm donors, helpless and tied." Wonder Woman, who was now allowed to speak, spat with fury. "You'll pay for every insult and every action. I'll rip you apart personally." Ashbourne didn't interrupt her, simply letting her rage boil over. "To the very end, you insist on this," he said with disappointment. "If you can't be a model, then I'll make you into an example." Without another word, Ashbourne opened another purple gate and stepped through it, vanishing from the hall. Confusion spread across Wonder Woman's face, but she held her glare, unyielding. Moments later, Ashbourne returned, dragging a woman by the hair. The woman kicked and screamed, her voice shrill with outrage. Ashbourne threw her down in front of Wonder Woman with a careless motion. The room seemed to freeze. The angry woman on the floor raised her head and Wonder Woman's fierce expression crumbled. "Diana," the woman gasped. Wonder Woman recoiled, horror creeping into her features. "Mother," she whispered. Before she could even process what she was seeing, blood sprayed across her face. Her mother's head, severed cleanly, toppled forward and her body collapsed to the ground. Wonder Woman stared, numb, as her mother's lifeless form pooled blood around her. Ashbourne's voice came, heavy and lamenting. The life she led and the daughter she raised made her head and torso separate in sadness. A scream tore from Wonder Woman's throat, her eyes blazing red with unspeakable rage. "I'll kill you," she roared. "I swear, when I'm free, I'll tear you apart." Ashbourne chuckled darkly. "Unlike you and your disgusting island," he said, "I am a generous, open-minded individual who truly believes in gender equality." With a casual gesture, he lifted the binding from her. "Draw your sword, princess of the Rapist Island," he said, his voice almost gleeful. Wonder Woman drew her sword with a snarl of rage and charged at Ashbourne with all her fury. Ashbourne didn't even seem fazed. He casually stepped to the side, his hand flickering forward to catch her by her hair mid-swing. With the same mocking smile on his face, he drove his knee into her back, the impact sending her flying across the ground. Strands of her dark hair were left in his hand as she crashed hard against the metal ground. "Oops," Ashbourne said lightly, examining the hair strands. "The hair is a lady's crown or something like that." He snapped the strands between his fingers. "Oh, right. You're no lady. Just another piece of filth. I almost feel like burning my hand." Wonder Woman staggered to her feet, a thin trickle of blood running from the spot where her hair had been ripped. With another furious scream, she charged again. Ashbourne effortlessly deflected her sword strike once more and answered with a brutal punch straight to her face. Wonder Woman was flung back again, her nose shattering with a sickening crunch. Yet she stood immediately, blood pouring from her nose, but her determination didn't waver. She attacked again. This time, Ashbourne drew his purple sword. Her blade met his and snapped like it was made of brittle glass. Before she could react, he struck her with the back of his sword's handle, knocking her down once again. The remaining heroes, still bound and helpless, watched in horror. One of Earth's greatest champions was being beaten mercilessly, and Ashbourne just kept smiling that mocking smile. Ashbourne casually drove his sword into the ground. "I won't allow anyone to say I bullied you with a sword," he said. "Stand up, Diana of the Rapist's Island. Don't forget your mother and her teachings. What she stood for. And why we are doing this." Wonder Woman staggered to her feet again, her vision blurred by blood and rage. With a growling scream, she hurled herself at him. Ashbourne met her charge head-on. He didn't block, he dodged each of her blows with almost lazy ease, retaliating with savage punches and brutal slams. Her lips cracked, blood trickling down her chin. Bruises bloomed across her body like ugly flowers. At every chance, Ashbourne grabbed her by the hair, using it as a handle to slam her face first into the ground. Minutes passed. Finally, Wonder Woman stood again, barely. Her body trembled under the weight of her injuries. She gasped for air, blood dripping from her nose, her mouth, and multiple wounds. Ashbourne, still untouched, tilted his head with faint amusement. "You lived so long, trained so hard," he said, "but in the end, you're just another thug. A brute who's good at beating those weaker than you." Wonder Woman, panting heavily, snarled back, "Stay still, let's see how tough you really are." Ashbourne chuckled darkly. "Fine," he said. "I won't move." Wonder Woman roared and charged one more time, putting everything she had left into a devastating punch. Her fist slammed into his face with a colossal shockwave that shook the entire mountain. The instant after, her eyes widened in horror. Ashbourne stood unmoving, looking her, completely unharmed, with the same mocking look. "I forgot to mention," Ashbourne said, his voice dripping with false regret, "I am invulnerable. More so than Superman, and I am actually a lot stronger." Before she could reply, Ashbourne casually swung his arm in a horizontal arc. Wonder Woman tried to block, but the force behind the blow was unimaginable. Her arms shattered instantly under the impact. Her ribs crumpled as she was sent rocketing backward, crashing through the wall and flying outside the mountain, disappearing from sight. Ashbourne chuckled, shaking his head in amusement. "Unfortunately for her," he said, "she didn't die instantly. Now she has to go through a slow, agonizing death." The watching heroes, still bound and helpless, were horrified. The casual way Ashbourne had destroyed her, combined with his strange powers, the binding spell, the purple sword, and now this unearthly strength and durability, they were starting to believe him. He might truly be stronger than Amazo. Ashbourne turned his gaze next to Batman. He spoke in the same amused tone. "So, oh great detective? Did you get your answers? Where I'm getting the magical items from? Why I am immune to things that can affect you? Your theory was a good one, I will give you that, but you still got it wrong. And now, everyone's death is because of your arrogance." Ashbourne lifted the binding from Batman completely, allowing him to move. Batman didn't attack. He stood still, tense, calculating every word. "You're some sort of magician, a very powerful one at that," Batman said slowly, "and you're the creator of these items. You lied, You didn't buy them from someone else. But why? Why hide it all along? To what end if not for committing crimes? That's your problem. And everyone else's, he said. You all think that having power means it must be used, to be a hero or a villain. I simply don't enjoy it. Violence and fighting are boring. The outcome is predictable, often messy. Talking, discussing, arguing, that's interesting. That's unpredictable to me. Then he gestured casually at the surroundings. This is why I avoid picking fights and why I always limited myself to simple weapons and basic martial arts. I restrained myself to no more than a healthy human strength the whole time. He added with a smirk, why do you really think I haven't gone all out to get rid of you when I had a chance in the court? Ashbourne stepped closer, voice turning colder. The only reason I turned a blind eye to your antics was because the Justice League is the watchdogs of this planet, and without you and the rest of the heroes, I would have to step in from time to time to fight for this planet. I can't have my home and planet destroyed or conquered. But I hate fighting. I truly despise the thought of war and conquer. Earth isn't capable of protecting itself properly. That's why I ignored you. Why I supported Cadmus. If your so-called heroes started causing worldwide chaos, someone else would handle it and take your place while I continue enjoying my peaceful life. He paused, looking over the battered heroes, but not only did you do your jobs inadequately multiple times and I was dragged into your mess. You even colluded together to annoy me when I was keeping to myself for the most part. Batman remained silent, his mind a whirlwind of racing thoughts. Ashbourne's words, as chaotic and cold as they were, fit too many of the inconsistencies Batman had uncovered about him over the years. Inwardly, Batman cursed him. If you just wanted to live like a strange asshole and enjoy yourself, Batman thought bitterly, then why hide? Why not just answer the damn questions and get along with your life? Why create all this confusion, these misunderstandings? This doesn't bring you peace. Only trouble. And now look where they are. They had gathered everyone here, expecting a major battle against the shadow monsters, a mysterious enemy they had prepared so much for, an enemy that forced them to hide their people, and instead, they ended up facing another monster altogether. One was as bad and they were ill-prepared against him. And the shadow creatures weren't even involved in this, at least not yet. Ashbourne raised his hand slowly, the air crackling around him. A violet-purple light engulfed his hand, swirling and flashing in a menacing glow. He spoke, his voice calm and detached. Once I clench my hand, everyone here will have their hearts crushed. It'll be the end. Ashbourne's gaze remained on Batman as he asked any last words. Batman's heart pounded. Thinking fast, he said urgently, you don't have to do this. Actually, I do. I like to keep my current slow life as is, and you have too much ego to just let go and leave me be. Ashbourne's fingers began to slowly close into a fist. Immediately, Batman felt something unseen graze his heart, an icy grip wrapping around it. He gritted his teeth against the sharp, burning pain that followed. It was different from anything he had felt before. His mind couldn't describe the sensation he was experiencing at that moment. Around him, the other frozen heroes were reacting too, their bodies twitching uncontrollably. And then, Ashbourne stopped. The purple glow dimmed slightly as Ashbourne relaxed his hand. He tilted his head to the side, his glowing eyes suddenly shining even brighter, burning like twin purple stars. Batman sucked in a breath, chest heaving slightly. He watched Ashbourne carefully. Ashbourne remained staring for a few seconds before turning his gaze back toward Batman, his voice low and cutting. Lucky you, he said. Someone spoke on your behalf. You'll live, this time. He took a step forward, his tone growing darker, heavier. But if this happens a second time, if my life is interrupted, Ashbourne said, I will find the people you hold closest, and skin them right in front of you. He let the words hang in the air, heavy and merciless. Starting with your son, Ashbourne continued, voice ice-cold. Then his bitch of a mother. Then your dear English butler. And the adopted ones won't be spared either. Ashbourne's eyes scanned the other heroes coldly. The same goes for the rest of you tribal brutes. Listen well, you can conspire, scheme, and prepare for every catastrophe imaginable, but it will never be enough. Not against me. I know your names. I know those you cherish. Bury them underground, send them beyond the stars, or tuck them away in some distant realm, it makes no difference. I will find them. Always. Ashbourne lifted his hand again. With a casual wave, the gun, the blue dagger, and his 2 armed guards flew back toward him. A gate of swirling purple energy opened behind him, crackling with a faint hum. "This is my last mercy to you all." With that, Ashbourne stepped through the portal and vanished from sight. The bindings on the heroes snapped and dissolved at last, leaving them free but utterly shaken. Ashbourne stepped through the swirling portal, and the scene of battle was left behind. He returned to the quiet of his home, where his 2 children, Ace and Amazo, along with T and Courtney, were gathered. Courtney was sitting beside Ace, her body rigid with anger, glaring sharply at Ashbourne the moment he arrived. Ashbourne glanced at her and spoke in a tone of annoyance. "I shouldn't have sent you to Metropolis," he said casually. "You actually came to rat me out. How could you?" Courtney's fists clenched, her voice rising in fury. "You killed someone. What did you do there? Who did you kill before you came back?" Ashbourne shrugged, utterly unfazed. "Only Wonder Woman's mother," he said offhandedly, "and possibly Wonder Woman too, if they don't make it in time." Courtney's stomach twisted in dread. Her face paled as she stammered, "Wait. Queen Hippolyta? Why was she there?" Ashbourne answered with the same unnerving nonchalance. "I dragged her there," he said, "and I beheaded her in front of her daughter. I needed to make an example and deliver a message." Courtney stared at him, horrified beyond words. The reality sank in. Ashbourne had dragged an innocent woman just to slaughter her in front of her own daughter. Whatever image she had tried to hold onto about him cracked violently and collapsed. He wasn't just some morally gray recluse, he was a monster. As if sensing her thoughts, Ashbourne spoke again, his voice completely void of remorse. "I am not some crazed killer. Everything I said about their island is true," he said. "The Amazonians are filthy scumbags. If you really want to put them under the law, every single one of them would face execution." Courtney's voice trembled slightly, but she still spoke. "Even so," she said, "you can't just kill like that." Ashbourne tilted his head slightly, regarding her coldly. "The law is on my side," he said. "Morals and ethics are on my side. And if I spread the truth about them, that island would have to worry about a nuke being sent their way." He took a step closer, his voice growing sharper. "You and your group show sympathy out of tribal bonds, not because of true ethics or justice. So spare me the drama, Courtney." Courtney was left speechless, her mouth opening and closing uselessly. Before she could gather her thoughts, T spoke up, her voice light and almost cheerful. "Personally, I think you did a great job with Amanda," T said. "Good riddance to that cow of a bitch." Amazo, standing casually nearby, nodded in agreement. "I hope the Justice League gets the message," he said. "They're completely outclassed. There are easier ways to commit a suicide." Courtney turned to look at Ace, hoping for some sense of sanity. But Ace only smiled at her warmly and said, "It didn't end that bad. As long as the other heroes keep their distance, Dad won't go after them. Dad is reasonable and a peace-loving person." For the first time, Courtney realized, truly realized, Ace and her family weren't good-hearted individuals. They just liked staying civil and keeping to themselves. But they won't feel remorse for killing. She swallowed thickly and turned to Ashbourne. "I need you to open another gate," she said, voice tight. "Back to Justice Mount. I need to go back." Deep inside her, a firm resolution formed. She would do everything in her power to prevent another clash with Ashbourne and his family. This small family of 4 was more dangerous, and more powerful, than the rest of the planet's heroes combined. Ashbourne said nothing. He simply lifted his hand, opening another swirling purple portal before her. Courtney stepped toward it, feeling the weight of countless new realities bearing down on her. As she reached the gate, Ace waved at her cheerfully. "Goodbye," she said. "Stay safe." Courtney nodded stiffly, unable to summon words. And then she stepped through, disappearing into the portal. When the portal finally sealed behind Courtney, Amazo asked, his tone curious but light. "Father, you teleported her to Metropolis intentionally, didn't you? So she could get here." He tilted his head slightly. "You didn't actually want to kill them. You just wanted to scare them into keeping a distance, right?" Ashbourne chuckled. "They're still useful to keep around," he said easily. And I doubt they'll dare to look our way again for quite some time after the scare I gave them. People can be courageous in the face of death, but once they truly feel the cold hand of death holding their hearts, feel the inevitable end touch their souls, fear grows against their wills and all that remain is the memory of what could have been. Ace sighed, her expression thoughtful. Courtney looked too shaken, she said. It might be difficult for her to go back after this. Things will take time, Ashbourne said. She'll come along. We are just a civilized family with too much power. Ace nodded quietly, accepting it. Then T piped up. Putting aside your skewed definition of what is a civilized family, why did you drag Wonder Woman's mother? She asked, isn't that a bit excessive? Ashbourne's face remained impassive. Not really, he replied. She deserved to be killed. And her daughter? She's the biggest hypocrite of them all. I needed to make an example. Amanda was not enough. The heroes needed to see one of them suffer the consequences of coming after me, and the mother and daughter were perfectly suited for that. It felt like a poetic justice. T laughed, a soft, almost cruel sound. Poor them, she said, smirking. And they still haven't found the truth of the Shadow Monarch. Ashbourne smiled, one thing at a time. Let them keep guessing. Meanwhile, at Mount Justice, the atmosphere was still suffocating with tension. When the purple portal reopened, every hero in the room froze, bodies going rigid with fear. Some immediately raised their weapons, preparing for Ashbourne's return, faces pale and hands trembling. But when they saw Stargirl step through and the portal closing gently behind her, their stances relaxed, though the fear didn't leave their eyes. Courtney glanced around, visibly worried, holding tightly to her staff. Pat rushed forward the moment he spotted her, concern etched deep into his features. What happened after you teleported away? He asked, gripping her arms gently. Courtney drew a shaky breath. I found myself in Metropolis, she said. I managed to find Ace, and with Amazo's help, they talked Ashbourne out of whatever he was doing here. The gathered heroes listened to every word. Slowly, the realization dawned. It was thanks to Stargirl's quick thinking, and Ashbourne's soft spot for his adoptive children that he decided to leave at the last second. Pat squeezed her shoulder, pride and gratitude shining in his eyes. Great thinking, he said softly. If you were even seconds later, everyone here would have died. Ashbourne was about to finish everyone here off. Courtney swallowed hard, the weight of it sinking deep into her bones. Before any more words could be exchanged, a commotion at the entrance caught everyone's attention. Green Lantern burst into the room, his face grim, carrying a limp and broken figure in his arms. Wonder Woman. Gasps filled the room. Courtney and the other heroes widened their eyes in shock. Wonder Woman's arms looked mangled, crushed beyond all hope of recovery. Her entire body was bloodied and battered, a horrifying testament to the devastating blow Ashbourne had unleashed. The sight shook even the bravest among them to their cores. 3 of their greatest heroes had fallen. No one knew what had become of Martian Manhunter. Superman's lungs had been pierced by Ashbourne's sword. And now Wonder Woman lay before them, her condition more grim than words could express. The full reality of it hit them like a hammer. Ashbourne had been a moment away from killing them all. And there had been nothing they could do to stop him, to resist the fate he wanted to deliver. They collectively shivered at the thought of facing him again. Among all the gathered heroes, no one was more shaken than Supergirl. She stood stiffly, staring blankly at the battered body of her cousin, her mind swirling with disbelief. Ashbourne had powers, real powers, the entire time. And not just minor abilities hidden away. No, he held overwhelming strength, enough to bring Superman, Wonder Woman, and Martian Manhunter to near death with ease, to kill everyone in a move from his hand. Not once she thought Ashbourne could have powers. He was always relying on gadgets and magical weapons, even skills and tactics. She had thought it was because he had to, because he was normal human at the end of the day. Her mind raced back over the countless interactions she'd had with him. They painted a different picture now. She recalled the unshakable confidence he carried, the ease with which he faced any threat. She remembered, with painful clarity, something he had once said to her. Just because you see a smile, don't think you know what's going on underneath. It had been right in front of her the whole time. Hints. Warnings. He had shown them glimpses of the truth, and all of them, especially her, had been blind to it. He almost told her right in the face, and she didn't even catch the truth. She had thought they were alike once. Two that have suffered and lost everything, struggling to find their place, because no one else truly understood. But now? She didn't know anymore which parts were real and which were not. Which moments had been genuine and which had been her own illusions. One thing, however, was painfully, undeniably clear. They had never been alike. Not even close. Her gaze shifted to her cousin lying nearby, broken and bloodied, barely clinging to life after Ashbourne's brutal retaliation. A wave of guilt crushed her chest. This is my fault. I added fuel to the fire. I pushed them further when I should have tried to stop them, to calm them down. And the worst part, the truly devastating part, was not just that she couldn't take revenge against the evil clone. It was that, in doing so, she had completely destroyed whatever fragile hope there had been of mending things with Ashbourne. She hadn't just lost Ashbourne. She had lost to the clone forever. And there was no fixing it now. In the common room of the Teen Titans Tower, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Jinx stomped into the living room, visibly frustrated. She threw herself onto the couch and crossed her arms. I spoke with Gizmo, she announced. He and the others, they knew. They knew Ashbourne had powers. The others turned toward her, surprised. Jinx continued, voice sharp, apparently, when the whole world turned into apes a while back, everyone was affected, except for Ashbourne. She shook her head in disbelief. He told them back then that he was the strongest being on Earth. But those idiots laughed it off, thought he was joking. Beast Boy raised his hands defensively. Do you blame them? He said. Who could have thought he was such a monster the whole time? Nightwing exhaled heavily, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Everything makes sense now, he said grimly. Why he was always so relaxed. Why he never seemed afraid of anything. Why years ago, the Puppet King's magic didn't work on him. He looked directly at Jinx, eyes narrowing slightly. That day, when you five tried to kidnap him. We didn't save him from you. His voice dropped, we saved you from him. Jinx's eyes widened in shock. She remembered that day clearly, the mockery, the strange way Ashbourne had reacted to their attempt and threats. She swallowed hard. They had been far too close to death without even realizing it. Across the room, Starfire remained silent, her gaze drifting repeatedly to Raven, who sat quietly in the corner, arms wrapped around herself. Finally, Starfire spoke, voice soft but firm. Raven. You knew about Ashbourne, didn't you? The entire room shifted its focus to Raven. Raven froze, her expression carefully blank. I didn't, she said slowly. What makes you think that? Starfire's eyes were piercing. You are always silent when it comes to Ashbourne. And twice, I saw you uncomfortable, worried. She held up 2 fingers. The first, when we met Ashbourne and we were kidnapped by the Preserver. The second, yesterday. It was not that you felt unwell, Raven. You were scared of him. Raven stared at her, stunned. She had never realized Starfire had been paying such close attention to her. Nightwing leaned forward, frowning. Raven, he said, do you know anything about him? Raven glanced at each of their faces, Nightwing, Beast Boy, Starfire, Jinx. All waiting, all suspicious. Silence stretched, heavy and accusing. Nightwing pressed again, more certain this time. What do you know? Raven closed her eyes, breathing in slowly. When she opened them, she made her decision, what she should say and what to keep to herself. Before I tell you about Ashbourne, she said quietly, I need to tell you about my father. And so, she began. She explained Trigon, the demon lord who could destroy entire worlds effortlessly. A being of such immense power that Earth had no chance against him if he ever fully manifested. Then, Raven shifted to her experience with Ashbourne. I felt his strength, she said. And I thought he might be like me. A half-demon. Her voice grew hollow. But he wasn't. And he didn't like me sensing it. He was going to kill me, until he realized who my father was. She looked down at her hands. Ashbourne let me go that day. But he threatened me. He said if I spoke about anything, he would come after me. The room was utterly silent. Raven's shoulders slumped as she continued, I considered telling you. I almost did. But that same night, my connection to my father was severed. Her voice cracked. My father talked to me right before that. The last thing my father ever told me. She swallowed. He was proud of me. For sending a monster after him. She lifted her head, eyes filled with a deep, helpless fear. If my father, a being who destroyed countless worlds, was crushed so quickly by Ashbourne. If Earth had no hope against Trigon. Then what of Ashbourne? How do you fight that? Her voice dropped to a whisper. I didn't dare to do anything that might make him angry. He told me he would know if I spoke about him. I didn't dare to test his patience. She looked up at the others, guilt and terror plain on her face. Yesterday, I prayed the League would just let him go. Because if they didn't, they were going to die, we were going to die. I knew the moment he stopped playing as a normal human, there will be no resisting him. Only death awaited us. The Titans were frozen, absorbing the devastating truth. Nightwing clenched his jaw. Starfire hugged herself tightly. Beast Boy stared at the floor, face pale. Even Jinx, especially Jinx, sat there, stunned into silence. She struggled to comprehend it. She had been with Ashbourne. Intimately. Casually. The realization hit her like a train. She had literally been held and smashed by the strongest being on Earth. And she never even knew. The streets of Gotham were as grim and foul as ever, the cold air carrying the distant sounds of sirens and chaos. Ashbourne strolled casually with his strange little family and Rex at his side. Rex, however, looked anything but relaxed. He glanced nervously at every shadow and every alleyway, the city's oppressive atmosphere making him visibly uncomfortable. Meanwhile, Ashbourne, Ace, Amazo, and T moved through the filth of Gotham as if they were on a Sunday walk through a park. After a while, the group stopped in front of an old, rundown hotel. Without hesitation, they stepped inside. Waiting for them was Harley Quinn, dressed in a bright, chaotic outfit and waving enthusiastically, "Glad to see ya, Ashy," she called out, her grin wide and genuine. Ashbourne chuckled deeply. And Miss Pam's birthday? Never. Harley laughed, skipping over to them. Come on, let me introduce you to the crew. She eagerly led them to the lounge area where other figures awaited, Clayface, King Shark, Frank the Plant sitting animatedly in a pot, and Cyborgman with his mechanical enhancements creaking as he waved. Ashbourne greeted them all casually, shaking hands, or in King Shark's case, a hefty fin, and to everyone's surprise, the two groups hit it off effortlessly. Clayface and Ace immediately started talking about acting, both passionate about the topic. King Shark discussed cybernetic systems with Amazo, finding a strange intellectual kinship. T found Frank adorable, laughing at the snarky comments the plant made. Meanwhile, Rex sat down next to Cyborgman, listening intently to his endless war stories with clear interest. Harley watched them with a wide grin. Seeing her chaotic friends getting along so well with Ashbourne's group was more than she expected. The gathering grew as more villains arrived, all invited by Harley for Pamela's big day. Though some villains gave Ashbourne's group suspicious glances, wondering why they were here, none dared to say anything aloud. Ace and Amazo's reputations were more than enough to keep anyone's mouth shut. When Pamela finally arrived, the birthday party truly kicked off. Ashbourne's group presented her with a gift, seeds of plants and flowers that didn't even exist in this universe. Pamela's reaction was priceless. She shrieked in joy, hugging the strange seeds to her chest, practically floating in happiness. For once, the gloomy walls of Gotham saw genuine, unfiltered bliss. But the peace was not meant to last. The entrance door slammed open, and in strode none other than Batman, Batgirl, and the new Robin, Jason Todd. The room froze. The trio scanned the room, stunned to see so many villains gathered in one place. They braced themselves, ready for a brutal confrontation. But before anything could happen, Ashbourne clapped his hands loudly, drawing every eye to him. "This is a birthday party," Ashbourne said smoothly, his voice cutting through the tension. "Please, no violence. That includes you three heroes." The villains stared, shocked. Batman paused, studied Ashbourne, and then slowly gave a single nod. Batgirl and Robin exchanged glances, their faces paling slightly. They hadn't expected this. The last person they wanted to meet has to be here enjoying a birthday party with Gotham's lunatics. The only thing the two could think of was just why. "Splendid," Ashbourne said with a broad smile. He turned back to the crowd. "Gentlemen and ladies, the heroes have agreed not to cause any trouble. We can't let them say heroes are more civilized than us villains, can we? It would sully our good name. Let's all enjoy the party." The villains murmured among themselves, baffled. Since when did villains have good names? And since when was this guy a villain? Still, none dared question it as they looked at Amazo and Ace standing near Ashbourne. There was a silent agreement between villains. Staying silent is better than being dead. Ashbourne gave Harley a wink. Harley burst into laughter, loving every second of the bizarre absurdity. Ashbourne then turned back to the Bat Trio. "Since you're here," he said warmly, "please enjoy some cake with us." Batgirl and Robin blinked, thoroughly thrown off by being invited to a villain's birthday party. Batman, however, wasn't interested in cake. His eyes were locked on Ashbourne. He walked forward, the cape swishing behind him with every determined step. "A word," Batman said to Ashbourne. Ashbourne raised an eyebrow at the intense look but gestured for Batman to lead the way. Batgirl and Robin quickly followed, tense and ready for anything. They moved to a shadowed corner of the room, away from the chatter and laughter. Batman wasted no time. "What did you mean by my son?" he asked, voice low and sharp. "Why do you think I will answer you now?" Ashbourne asked with an amused tone. "We are the watchdogs to you, aren't we? Instead of me putting time and effort in finding what you meant, you can tell me so I can get back to my work," Batman replied with a serious tone. Ashbourne laughed hearing that and said, "I had never thought I would see the great Batman act like this. It is way out of your character, but I guess that's the closest we get to the butterfly effect. After everything I did." Batman didn't react to Ashbourne's words, he just kept staring at him. Ashbourne's eyes glittered mischievously as he continued, "So, you truly didn't know you have a son?" He gave a mocking laugh. "You really should have used protection." Batman's jaw clenched. "I can't have a son, I would have known of the possibility at least," he said coldly. Ashbourne was silent for a long moment, then laughed even harder. "The great Batman," he said between laughs, "was drugged and raped." He slapped his thigh in sheer amusement. "That's even better." Batman's fists trembled, his fury barely contained. "What are you talking about?" he ground out again. Ashbourne's face turned serious for a moment. "Talia," he said, "daughter of Ra's al Ghul. She has a son from you. His name is Damian Wayne." Ashbourne tilted his head. "Last I checked, he's being trained to become the next head of the League of Assassins on some island." Batman clenched his fists so hard his knuckles cracked audibly. Without giving him more time to process, Ashbourne turned and walked away, leaving him to stew in the truth. Batgirl and Robin rushed to Batman's side, both visibly shaken. "He might be lying," Robin said, hoping for reassurance. But Batman shook his head grimly. "He has no reason to lie, and from his words and actions in the past, I suspect his magic allows him to gather information in a way we yet to understand. In addition, once you factor in his deducing ability and how good he is at reading people, it makes his words more believable." He closed his eyes briefly and paused for some time before continuing. "Moreover, there was a time. I slept close to Talia. I didn't know anything happened while I was asleep. I suspected something was wrong back then, but I couldn't find any issue." Batgirl and Robin stared at him, their faces full of shock and disbelief. The atmosphere among the Bat Trio was heavy after Ashbourne's unsettling revelation. They conversed quietly, trying to make sense of everything they had just learned. Batman was tense but determined. "We'll investigate this, privately," he said in his usual low tone. Batgirl and Robin nodded, still trying to shake the surreal feeling that had settled over them. Deciding they had enough madness for one night, the trio made their way toward the exit. As they walked through the chaotic but somehow peaceful villain gathering, they passed by Ashbourne and Amazo, who were casually chatting as if nothing in the world could bother them. Ashbourne's voice reached their ears. "You're at that age where you're interested in the other gender, huh?" Ashbourne said with a slight proud smirk. "You have grown." Amazo, his voice as calm and logical as ever, asked, "But father, if I want to experience love, how should I do that?" Build another intelligent android. Ashbourne laughed quietly. You could, he replied, but that would be more like raising your mate rather than finding love, and even if it works, it is still a morally questionable plan even for androids. We should find you a cute android girl who has already gained consciousness and has no perceived programming of you. The Bat trio froze mid-step, staring at the two in bewilderment. Amazo tilted his head thoughtfully. I scanned Earth. There is no such android. Ashbourne chuckled again. There must be someone out there in space. And worst-case scenario, we visit other worlds if needed. Amazo nodded solemnly. That makes sense. The Bat trio could only stare, dumbfounded. Batman grunted and immediately resumed walking, wanting absolutely nothing more to do with Ashbourne's madness. Batgirl and Robin hurried after him, still looking over their shoulders at the strange conversation they had just overheard. After a moment of silence, Robin whispered, Do you think they'll really try to find a cute android girl? And if they do, what are they gonna do? Program their children. Batgirl opened her mouth, then closed it. She had no words. Batman, without even looking back, said coldly, Forget them. Forget whatever they're thinking. It's better to avoid them altogether. The trio quickened their pace, disappearing into the cold Gotham night, leaving behind the strangest, most peaceful villain birthday party they had ever witnessed. Rex stood with a baffled look frozen on his face, staring at Ashbourne and Amazo as if they had grown second heads. You two are going to other worlds, to search for a possible partner for Amazo? A girl-based android, with consciousness. Ashbourne and Amazo both nodded at the same time, perfectly in sync, as if this was the most normal plan in the world. Rex rubbed his temples, feeling a headache starting to form. Putting aside the sheer absurdity of this insane quest, what about Shadow Corp? Who's going to manage it? Without missing a beat, Ashbourne pointed at T with a lazy finger. She's getting a promotion. New CEO. Rex's eye twitched violently. Are you being serious right now? Ashbourne nodded, completely serious. It's not like it's weird. Mercy Graves is the CEO of LexCorp, remember? She got the exact same promotion after all. And besides, he added, you're there to help her. Rex let out a deep, defeated sigh, realizing arguing would go nowhere. I know better than to try and discuss logic with you. Just, don't disappear for too long. Ashbourne gave him a casual nod. It'll be a few months at most. Shouldn't be too bad. Ace, who had been lounging nearby, chimed in, half teasing, half serious. What if something goes wrong while you two are gone? Like, the Justice League suddenly growing a backbone again. Ashbourne chuckled, unconcerned. Simple. Just call Baru and the others. They'll handle it. Rex blinked. Who the hell is Baru? Ashbourne grinned mischievously. The Ant King. Rex stared at him blankly, then sighed again, even more exhausted. Fine. Don't tell me. Ace and T burst out laughing while Amazo and Ashbourne just shared an amused smile between them, thoroughly entertained by Rex's constant state of barely contained exasperation. At the Kent farm, the evening air was filled with excitement and warmth. Lois Lane was sitting beside Clark, her hands gently resting on her stomach, as she shared the news with his family. I'm pregnant, she announced with a glowing smile. Clark's parents, Martha and Jonathan Kent, along with Kara, stared at her for a second in surprise before breaking into wide grins and congratulations. Martha was practically bouncing with excitement. I'm going to prepare some dessert for the occasion, she said, bustling toward the kitchen with renewed energy. Laughter and soft chatter filled the room as the family celebrated. But just as Jonathan turned on the TV to catch some background noise, the room fell into an eerie silence. The news anchor's voice cut through the warmth like a knife. In a shocking development, the anchor said, Ashbourne Black, CEO of Shadow Corp and one of the most influential figures in the world, has officially stepped down from his position, appointing T. Hamilton as the new CEO. The screen showed the image of T, the clone of Supergirl, dressed in professional clothing, smiling confidently at the camera. The news anchor continued, clearly baffled. Formerly known as the chauffeur for Ashbourne's children, Hamilton's meteoric rise mirrors the unexpected appointment of Mercy Graves at LexCorp years ago. Martha returned from the kitchen, dessert half forgotten in her hands, staring at the screen. "What is going on with them?" she asked, bewildered. Lois frowned, folding her arms. "That doesn't make any sense. Why would Ashbourne suddenly step down?" Without a word, Kara stood up sharply and left the house. Clark stood up too, instinctively moving to follow her, concern flashing across his face. "I have to go after her," he said quickly. "If she confronts Ashbourne, she could be in real danger." But Martha put a firm hand on his arm. "No, leave her alone for a while," she said gently. Clark looked down at his mother, uncertain. "You don't understand. Kara might do something reckless. If she goes after Ashbourne, or even just her clone." Martha shook her head calmly. "She won't seek him out." Lois, confused and concerned, looked between them. "What exactly is Kara's deal with Ashbourne anyway?" Clark sighed heavily and sat back down. He told Lois everything he knew, how her fight with the clone ended, how Kara and Ashbourne had once been somewhat close, and how a misunderstanding, fueled by her clone's existence, had shattered that bond. Martha added quietly, "Kara told me that her clone lied to her. It led to Kara cutting ties with Ashbourne, thinking he betrayed her trust. By the time she realized the truth, it was too late. Ashbourne and the clone were together." Lois frowned deeply, the pieces fitting together grimly. "So she hates the clone. The clone beat her, ruined her chance with the person she liked. In her eyes the clone took her place." Clark nodded with a sigh. "I think it is for the better. She has nothing to do with Ashbourne. He is extremely dangerous and he doesn't think or act the way we expect from someone as powerful as him. I must find her, if Kara acts on her anger." He didn't complete his sentence, but it was clear how concerned he was. The last thing Superman wanted is to have a conflict with Ashbourne again. The Justice League still don't understand how his powers work. A confrontation with him is no different than suicide, and that without accounting for his family. Martha shook her head again, more firmly this time. "Kara knows she can't beat the clone. Not in a fight. And then there's Ashbourne's monstrous kids, and she saw what Ashbourne is capable of." She looked out the window, her gaze soft. "Kara needs time. Time to grieve, and time to let it go." Clark sat back, the weight of it all sinking onto his shoulders, as the house fell into silence once again. T sat behind the massive desk of the Shadow Corp office, her cheek resting against her hand as she stared boredly at the endless reports in front of her. She let out a deep sigh, twirling a pen between her fingers. "So this is what being a CEO feels like," she muttered. She had honestly thought this job would be fun, wielding power, making decisions, and being important while the others did the actual work. Instead, it was mind-numbing torture. She couldn't believe Ashbourne actually enjoyed this kind of boring work. In her eyes, Ashbourne was micromanaging everything in Shadow Corporation. A light tapping came from the window, interrupting her suffering. T blinked, looked up, and there she was. Supergirl hovered outside the glass, her expression cold and unreadable. T blinked in surprise for a moment before a sly smirk curled on her lips. Her gaze shifted to the desk where a single button waited invitingly. Without hesitation, T pressed it. A soft hiss echoed as the window panel slid open. Still, Supergirl didn't enter. She remained outside, hovering midair, her cape fluttering behind her. T stood up slowly, brushing her skirt smooth. "Do you like my new look?" she asked mockingly, gesturing to her sharp, professional attire. Supergirl ignored the taunt completely. "What is going on? Where is Ashbourne?" she asked, her voice sharp and controlled. T chuckled, her smirk widening. "Not throwing a punch first? And here I thought you were here to fight me," she teased. But seeing Supergirl's unchanged expression, she shrugged lazily. "Who knows? He and Amazo left this dimension. I don't know where they went or when they'll come back." Supergirl's fists clenched at her sides. "Is this another one of your lies?" she demanded, her voice low with anger. T laughed lightly. "Not this time, it's the truth. You can check with Ace if you want. Make sure you don't cause another misunderstanding, like last time," she said. Supergirl's eyes flared red. "You have no shame," she spat, "saying that after lying to me." T only laughed harder, clearly unfazed. "I lied back then just to annoy you," she said easily. I didn't think for a second that you'd be that stupid. That you wouldn't figure it out and would actually make everything worse. T tilted her head mockingly. Honestly? I didn't even know you hadn't realized the truth until Amazo told us about his conversation with you. Supergirl's eyes widened slightly, her fury faltering. Does Ashbourne know? She asked tightly. T nodded without hesitation. Supergirl's voice was strained as she asked, and he didn't tell you anything? T shrugged and said, he didn't care much about it. I lied, sure. But you were the one who drew the line. You were the one who didn't even try to understand properly and made your judgment. You even went behind his back, exposed me to Amanda Waller and the Hero Band. Oh, and that day he gave you the potion because you asked. He just accepted your request. It was never a trade in his eyes. Supergirl's eyes widened even more, a flash of guilt flickering across her face. T laughed cruelly. Ashbourne has his ways of knowing things. He knew about your little secret meetings. He knew how you stepped in to make him look worse to the others and every word you spoke. Turning back toward her desk, T pressed the window button again. The glass slid shut with a final click, cutting Supergirl off from the office. T sat back down, not sparing another glance at the floating figure outside. She grabbed a new report and began reading, as if Kara wasn't even there. Outside the window, Supergirl hovered a moment longer before finally turning around and flying off into the distance. Inside, T smiled smugly to herself. Tormenting Supergirl was way more fun than running a company.
And that concludes this episode. If you enjoyed it, I'd seriously appreciate it if you could leave a like on the video, as it genuinely helps out a lot and keeps me going. Plus, it takes only 1 second. That said, have a wonderful day. See you in the next one.